A millionaire's daughters spend an entire month without eating, while renowned doctors fail to explain the fear consuming the two children. With each passing day, their health worsens, and neither money nor specialists can prevent the worst from happening. With no way out, the father accepts the unlikely help of a discredited nanny who decides to act in a way no one has ever tried before. What she does seems impossible, but it changes that family's destiny forever. The wall clock read 3 in the morning when William Ashford pushed open his daughter's bedroom door for the 10th time that night. The soft light from the cloud-shaped lamp illuminated 2 pale little faces on pink pillows. Emily, 4 years old, slept restlessly, her brown hair stuck to her sweaty forehead. Beside her, little Sophia, just 2 years old, breathed with difficulty, her tiny chest rising and falling in a rhythm that seemed to demand too much effort for such a fragile body. William approached the bed and knelt beside the girls. Carefully, he adjusted the blanket over Sophia and brushed a lock of hair from Emily's face. They were both thinner, visibly thinner. The arms that were once chubby and full of little folds now showed protruding bones. Their cheeks had lost that characteristic roundness of childhood. It was as if someone were slowly erasing his daughters day by day, and he could do nothing to stop it. 32 days. An entire month. 4 full weeks since Emily and Sophia had last eaten. The memory of that fateful dinner still tormented him every night. He had been in his study, closing an important deal for the expansion of his hotel chain, when he received the desperate call from the former nanny. When he got home, he found Sophia crying hysterically, coughing and choking, while Emily cowered in a corner of the living room, her eyes wide with terror. The nanny, Mrs. Gable, a stern woman in her 60s who believed in old-fashioned methods of child-rearing, tried to explain that she was just doing her job. The girl needed to eat, she was throwing a tantrum, and she had just held her head firmly to get the food in. That's how it was done in the old days, she argued. Children today were too spoiled. But William saw the fear in his daughter's eyes and dismissed the woman on the spot. He thought that would be the end of the problem. He called pediatricians, talked to the girls, tried to calm them. But the next morning, when he prepared oatmeal with honey, Emily's favorite dish, she pushed the spoon away forcefully and started to cry. Sophia just shook her head, repeating no in a desperate way. Since then, nothing, not a single solid food had passed through those small throats, only a few sips of milk and water, and even that was a daily battle. William stood up carefully so as not to wake the girls and walked to the bedroom window. Down below, New York City glittered even in the dead of night, the lights of Fifth Avenue twinkling in the distance like fallen stars on the asphalt. His duplex apartment on the Upper East Side had a privileged view of the city he had conquered with hard work. At 23, he started with a small hostel in the East Village. Today, at 36, he owned a chain of 17 hotels spread across the United States. He had enough money to buy anything he wanted, influence to open doors that remained closed to most people. But none of that mattered. Now, his entire empire couldn't make his daughters eat. The phone vibrated in the pocket of his sweatpants. It was a message from Jessica, his personal assistant, confirming an appointment with yet another specialist for the next day, the 5th doctor in a month. William typed a quick thank you response and looked back at his daughters. Dr. Peterson, a renowned pediatrician from Mount Sinai Hospital, had been direct at the last consultation. The girls were physically healthy. There was no illness, no digestive problem, no allergy or intolerance. The problem was psychological, a deep trauma caused by the choking episode. Both had associated the act of eating with danger and suffering. It was a survival reaction of their brains, a form of protection that, ironically, was slowly killing them. The doctor recommended therapy, patience, time. He said cases like this could take months to resolve. But he also warned that if the girls didn't start eating again soon, it would be necessary to hospitalize them and start feeding them through a gastric tube. The idea of seeing his daughters in the hospital, with tubes stuck up their noses connected to machines, made William's stomach turn. He left the girls' room and went to the kitchen. The refrigerator was full of food that no one ate. Fresh fruits, yogurts, imported cheeses, artisanal breads. Mrs. Vance, the housekeeper who had worked with him for over 10 years, made sure to keep everything always stocked, hoping that one day the girls would choose something and start eating again. But the food would spoil, be thrown away, and replaced by other food that would meet the same fate. William took a bottle of water and sat at the kitchen table. The silence of the apartment was oppressive. It hadn't always been like this. 2 years ago, when Sophia was born, the house was full of life and noise. Catherine, his wife, would hum while breastfeeding the baby. Emily would run through the hallways laughing. There was light, warmth, love. But the delivery was complicated. Sophia was born healthy, but Catherine developed severe hemorrhaging and almost didn't survive. She spent weeks in the hospital, underwent blood transfusions and painful procedures. When she finally came home, she was no longer the same person. Depression arrived silently, like a fog that settles in slowly. Catherine couldn't get out of bed, couldn't take care of the babies, couldn't feel anything but a deep and frightening emptiness. William tried to help, hired nurses, therapists, psychiatrists, but nothing worked. Catherine only got worse, becoming a shadow of who she once was. After 6 months of suffering, with mutual consent and medical recommendation, she went to a specialized clinic in Switzerland. The treatment would be intensive, long-term, but there was hope for recovery. William waited for her to come back. He took care of the daughters alone, hired nannies, reorganized his life. But after 6 months at the clinic, Catherine sent an email. She said she wasn't coming back, that she didn't feel capable of being a mother, that she needed to rebuild her life away from them. The words were direct, almost clinical, as if she were ending a work contract and not abandoning her family. There was no more contact after that. No calls, no messages, no attempt to see her daughters. For 18 months it was as if Catherine had disappeared from the planet. William learned to live with it. He explained to Emily, as gently as possible, that Mommy was sick and needed to stay away for a while. The girl cried for weeks, asking every day when her mother would return. But children are resilient in ways that surprise adults. Over time, Emily stopped asking. Sophia had no memories of her mother. She was too young when Catherine left. The two adapted to the new reality, creating a routine without a maternal figure. And William became both father and mother, balancing his business with his daughter's needs. But now this new tragedy, this nightmare that seemed to have no end. William looked at his phone again. 4 in the morning. In a few hours, Mrs. Vance would arrive for the workday. She was the one who had kept the house running since Catherine left. A woman in her 50s, with grey hair always tied in a bun, her hands calloused from years of domestic work. She had a firm but affectionate way with the girls, and William trusted her completely. Sleep wouldn't come again that night, he knew. William got up and walked to his study. He sat in the leather armchair behind the mahogany desk and opened his laptop. He had accumulated emails, reports to review, important decisions to make about the opening of the new hotel in Aspen. But the words on the screen seemed blurry, meaningless. How could he concentrate on business when his daughters were wasting away? He closed the laptop with more force than he intended. The sound echoed through the silent office. William rested his elbows on the desk and held his head in his hands. He felt the tears come hot and uncontrollable. He cried silently, his shoulders shaking, allowing himself this weakness only because there was no one to see. During the day, in front of the girls, the staff, the doctors, he maintained his composure. He was the successful businessman, the strong and confident father who had everything under control. But there, alone in the dead of night, he could be just a desperate man, terrified of losing the only people who truly mattered in his life. How long he cried, William couldn't say. When he finally composed himself and wiped his face with the back of his hands, the faint light of dawn was beginning to filter through the windows. Another day was beginning. Another day of struggle, of anguish, of trying to find a solution to the impossible. The sound of keys in the lock announced Mrs. Vance's arrival. William heard the housekeeper's familiar footsteps through the apartment, heard her turn on the coffee maker in the kitchen. He got up and went to meet her. Mrs. Vance looked at him with that expression of maternal concern she always had lately. "You didn't sleep again, Mr. Ashford," she said, using the formal address she insisted on maintaining despite their years together. "You'll get sick too if you keep this up." William just shrugged. "I can't sleep knowing what they're going through." We have an appointment with another pediatrician tomorrow. This one is a specialist in childhood trauma, recommended by Dr. Peterson. Mrs. Vance nodded as she prepared the coffee. She was silent for a few moments, as if measuring her words. Finally, she turned to him with a hesitant expression. "Mr. Ashford, I have a suggestion. You might think it's absurd. You might even be offended. But I have to say something." William frowned. "Go on, Eleanor. I'm willing to try anything at this point." The housekeeper took a deep breath. "There's a young woman who works here in the building. She's a cleaner. She cleans the hallways and common areas. Her name is Sarah." William looked at the housekeeper with a confused expression. "A cleaner?" He didn't understand where Mrs. Vance was going with this. "Yes, sir, Sarah. She's 29, the mother of an 8-year-old girl. She's been working in the building for about 3 years, always very dedicated, polite." The housekeeper paused, pouring coffee into 2 cups. "I've seen her with the children in the condominium a few times. The parents sometimes leave their kids playing in the recreation area while they go get mail or talk to the superintendent, and there's always a child who starts crying or throwing a tantrum. Sarah has a way with them that I've never seen before. In 2 minutes the child is calm, smiling, playing with her." William took the coffee cup but didn't drink. "Eleanor, with all due respect, I've already consulted 5 specialists, renowned pediatricians, child psychologists with decades of experience, professionals who studied for years to understand trauma in children, and you want me to entrust my daughters to a cleaner, with no training, no credentials, no formal qualifications?" Mrs. Vance was not intimidated by his tone of voice. She held his gaze firmly. "I know it sounds crazy, Mr. Ashford. I know you have every right to think it's absurd. But have all those specialists managed to help the girls? Are the children eating? Are they getting better?" The words hit William like a punch to the gut. "No," he admitted quietly, "they're not." "Then what do you have to lose by trying? Sarah won't charge a fortune like all those doctors. And if it doesn't work, at least you've tried everything you could. But I have a feeling, you know. I've worked in this house for a long time. I saw you build everything you have. I trust my instincts, and my instinct tells me this young woman can help." William took a sip of the coffee, which went down his throat, bitter. The proposal seemed ridiculous. He who could afford the best professionals in the country, considering hiring a cleaner to solve a complex problem of childhood psychological trauma. What would people say? What would his business partners think if they knew? But then he thought of Emily and Sophia, of their fragile bodies wasting away day after day, and his pride seemed petty in comparison. "How do you know this woman?" William asked, still skeptical. "We've talked a few times when she's cleaning our floor. She always asks about the girls. She's always been very thoughtful. I know her daughter has a heart problem, needs constant medical attention. Sarah works 3 different jobs to pay for the treatment. She's a fighter, Mr. Ashford, the kind of person who never gives up." "And what exactly do you think she can do that doctors with PhDs couldn't?" Mrs. Vance poured more coffee for herself before answering. "I can't explain it properly, sir. But those doctors, with all due respect to them, they come with their white coats, their clipboards, their theories. They spend half an hour with the girls and then they leave. Sarah is a mother. She's been through tough times with her own daughter, I know that. She has a patience that comes from someone who has truly suffered. I think sometimes that's what's missing, you know? Less science and more heart." William was silent for long minutes. Logic told him to refuse, to stick with the specialists, not to do something so far outside of protocol. But desperation spoke louder than logic. And deep down, very deep down, there was a tiny spark of hope. If someone with no formal education could help his daughters when doctors couldn't, what difference did it make? "All right," he said finally. "You can bring her here, but I'm not promising anything. If I don't like my first impression, if she says something foolish or seems like she doesn't know what she's doing, I'll send her away on the spot. Deal?" Mrs. Vance's face lit up. "Deal, Mr. Ashford. I'll talk to her today." As the housekeeper left to start her workday, William remained in the kitchen, finishing his coffee. He felt like a drowning man, grabbing at anything that floated by, not knowing if it was a life raft or a weight. That would pull him further down. But he had no more choices. The doctors had been clear. If the girls didn't start eating soon, hospitalization would be inevitable. The idea of seeing Emily and Sophia in the hospital with tubes and needles terrified him more than anything. The rest of the day passed in a haze of video conference meetings and phone calls that William could barely pay attention to. His mind constantly returned to his daughters. Emily was in the living room playing with building blocks, but her movements were slow, tired. Sophia was sleeping on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket, with no energy even to watch the cartoons she once loved. The temporary nanny William had hired, a young woman with a degree in education named Megan, watched the girls with a worried but helpless expression. That afternoon, Mrs. Vance returned with news. "I spoke with Sarah during her break. She said she can come tomorrow after her morning shift. She won't charge anything at first. She wants to see if she can help first." William nodded. This only increased his suspicion. Who worked for free? What kind of person would do that? But he didn't say anything, just thanked her and went back to his study. The night was another lost battle. Megan prepared warm porridge for the girls, something light and easy to swallow. Emily looked at the plate and started to cry, shaking her head frantically. Sophia didn't even look, turning her face to the side. William tried to talk to them using the gentle, encouraging voice he'd read about in some article on childhood trauma. He promised they wouldn't force them, that they didn't have to eat everything, just a little bit. But the girls remained adamant, their little eyes full of fear and refusal. Another night without food. Another night William spent watching his daughters sleep, counting the ribs that were beginning to show under their thin skin, touching the faces that grew more angular each day. He had read that young children could go weeks without eating, surviving on liquids. But for how much longer? How long until their bodies simply gave up? The next morning, William was more nervous than before any important business meeting. He changed his clothes 3 times, not knowing why it mattered. Mrs. Vance prepared the apartment, tidied the living room, put fresh flowers in the vase by the entrance. The girls were in their room with Megan, oblivious to the activity. The doorbell rang at exactly 2 in the afternoon. William opened the door and saw Sarah for the first time. She was younger than he expected, looking even younger than the 29 years Eleanor had mentioned. She was of average height, with a slender but strong body, like someone used to physical labor. Wavy brown hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, with a few rebellious strands escaping around her face. She wore faded jeans, a plain white t-shirt and worn-out sneakers. That had seen better days. She carried a patched cloth bag. No makeup, no jewelry, nothing that drew attention. An ordinary person, the kind who would go unnoticed in a crowd. But Sarah's eyes were different, dark brown, firm and direct. There was no shyness there, nor that exaggerated submissiveness that some people showed in the presence of wealth. She looked at William as an equal, and that unsettled him. "Good afternoon," she said in a calm voice. "I'm Sarah. Mrs. Vance told me about your daughters." William stepped back, making room for her to enter. "Please come in." He tried to maintain a professional, distant tone. "Thank you for coming." Sarah entered the apartment, and William watched as she looked around. The place was ostentatiously luxurious, impossible not to notice. Italian marble floors, expensive paintings on the walls, imported designer furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows with a panoramic view of New York City. She examined everything with a calm gaze, without showing exaggerated awe or discomfort. Just observing. "Beautiful apartment," she commented simply, without the tone of forced admiration that many people used. William led her to the living room and gestured to the sofa. "Please, have a seat." "Would you like some water, coffee, anything?" "Water would be fine, thank you." Mrs. Vance appeared quickly with 2 glasses of water and then discreetly withdrew. William sat in the armchair opposite the sofa, keeping his distance. He felt strangely uncomfortable, as if he were the one being evaluated, not her. "So," he began, not quite sure how to approach the subject. "Eleanor must have explained the situation. My daughters stopped eating a month ago. I've consulted 5 different specialists, and no one has been able to help. Frankly, I don't know what you could do that doctors couldn't, but I'm willing to try anything at this point." Sarah took a sip of water before answering. I understand your skepticism. I don't have a college degree. I didn't study psychology or pediatrics. But I'm a mother, and I've been through something similar with my own daughter. I know what it's like to be desperate, to see your child suffering and not be able to help. What happened to your daughter? William asked, genuinely curious now. She stopped talking at age 3. Completely. She went 2 months without saying a single word. Sarah spoke in a calm voice, but William noticed the old pain in her eyes. It was after she witnessed a very ugly argument between me and her father, my ex-husband. The girl was traumatized. I consulted doctors, psychologists at the community health center. They all said the same thing. Trauma. It needs time. It needs patience. But no one taught me exactly what to do. And what did you do? I learned on my own, through trial and error. I discovered that traumatized children don't need pressure or force. They need security. They need to feel like they are in control again. Sarah leaned forward slightly. May I see your daughters? William hesitated. They're in their room now with the nanny, but I need you to understand something. I will not allow anyone to force my daughters to do anything. They've had enough trauma. If you've come here with some idea of making them eat, it won't work. I didn't come here to force anyone to do anything, Mr. Ashford. In fact, my method is the exact opposite of that. What method? Sarah smiled for the first time, a small but genuine smile. You'll have to trust me. I know it's difficult. I know I'm a stranger with no credentials. But give me 1 week. If in 7 days you don't see any improvement, I'll leave and never come back without charging a cent. What do you think? William studied her face. There was something in Sarah's calmness that intrigued him. She didn't seem to be trying to impress him or convince him in an exaggerated way. She just presented the facts directly and waited for him to decide. This was so different from the specialists who had come before, with their elaborate speeches and empty guarantees. 1 week, he finally agreed. But if at any point I think you're harming the girls in any way, you leave immediately. Fair enough. William stood up and led her down the hall to his daughter's room. He knocked lightly on the door before opening it. Emily and Sophia were sitting on the plush carpet of the room, surrounded by toys they barely touched. The nanny, Megan, was in a small chair in the corner, flipping through a children's magazine. When William entered, followed by Sarah, all 3 looked up. Girls, this is Sarah. She's going to spend some time with you, okay? William used the most cheerful tone he could manage, trying to hide his own apprehension. Emily looked at the visitor with those huge brown eyes that seemed to take up half of her thin face. Sophia just watched in silence, sucking her thumb, something she had started doing again since the trauma. Megan stood up and greeted Sarah with a polite nod. Sarah crouched down to the girl's level but didn't get too close. She kept a respectful distance. Hello, Emily. Hello, Sophia. You have very beautiful names. Emily didn't answer, just kept staring. Sophia shrank closer to her sister. William felt his chest tighten, seeing the fear in his daughters. They had become so scared, so closed off. Where was the joy they had before, the spontaneous laughter, the natural curiosity of childhood? Sarah didn't seem bothered by the lack of response. She remained crouched there, not forcing interaction. I really like your room. You have a lot of cool toys here. That teddy bear over there is very cute. Still nothing. The silence stretched uncomfortably. William was about to say something to break the tension when Sarah simply stood up. All right, I'll let you play. It was a pleasure to meet you. She left the room naturally without showing frustration or disappointment. William followed her, confused by this strange approach. In the hallway, he stopped her. Is that it? You didn't even really try to talk to them? Mr. Ashford, traumatized children don't respond well to strangers trying to get close right away. They need to observe me first, decide if I'm safe or not. Forcing conversation now would be counterproductive. And what's the next step then? Sarah looked at the watch on her wrist, a cheap model with a plastic band. I have to get back to work in half an hour. I can come earlier tomorrow. If you'll allow it, I'll spend the day here if possible. The whole day? Yes, I need the girls to get used to my presence, to see that I'm not a threat. William crossed his arms. He still wasn't convinced, but he had agreed to give her a week. You can come. What time? I finish my morning shift at 9. I can be here at 9:30. All right, I'll let Megan know you'll be here. Sarah picked up the cloth bag she had left at the entrance and headed for the door. Before leaving, she turned to him. Mr. Ashford, your doctors said it takes patience and time, right? They did. Then believe in that. No trauma heals overnight, but I promise I will do everything I can to help your daughters. After she left, William stood in the living room, processing the encounter. Sarah was different from what he had expected. There was no arrogance or miraculous promises. She spoke with a simplicity and quiet certainty that came from lived experience, not from books. But would that be enough? That night was the same as the previous ones. Emily and Sophia refused dinner, crying when Megan tried to convince them to have at least a little banana smoothie. William put them to bed, singing softly, his heart breaking to see how weak they were. The next morning, Sarah arrived promptly at 9:30. This time she wore another pair of equally worn jeans and a light green long-sleeved shirt. She carried the same cloth bag and a plastic bag. "Good morning," she greeted as William opened the door. "I brought a few things I might need." William let her in and watched as she took some simple items from the bag: a drawing pad, colored pencils, a children's book with a colorful cover, a small portable radio. Nothing too elaborate or expensive. "Can you show me where I can be with the girls?" William led her to the room again. Emily and Sophia were having breakfast, or rather, Megan was trying to get them to have it. There were 2 glasses of warm milk on the low table, practically untouched. The girls looked at Sarah with the same frightened expression as the day before. "Good morning, girls," Sarah said in a soft voice. "I've come to spend the day with you if you don't mind." Emily clung to Megan's arm. Sophia started to whimper. William felt the urge to intervene, to ask Sarah to leave, but he held back. 1 week, he had promised. Sarah didn't seem disturbed by the negative reaction. She simply sat on the floor, leaned her back against the wall near the window away from the girls, and opened her drawing pad. She began to draw something with the colored pencils, concentrating, as if she were completely alone in the room. William watched from the doorway for a few minutes. Sarah drew flowers, houses, trees, simple but neat lines. She didn't look at the girls, didn't try to include them. She just drew in silence. Emily and Sophia watched her from a distance, curious but still wary. Megan seemed confused by the whole situation. "Mr. Ashford, do you need to go to work?" Sarah asked without looking up from her drawing. "You can leave it to me. I'll stay here with Megan and the girls." Still reluctant, William said goodbye to his daughters and went to his study. All morning he could barely concentrate. He kept wondering what was happening in the room. Did Sarah really have a plan, or was she just improvising? At 11 o'clock, he couldn't take it anymore and made up an excuse to leave his online meeting. He went to the girls' room silently and peeked through the slightly open door. The scene he saw left him perplexed. Sarah was still sitting in the same spot, but now she was reading a children's book in a low voice. Not to the girls specifically, just reading to herself, as if passing the time. Emily had moved a little closer, sitting in the middle of the room instead of clinging to Megan as before. Sophia still kept her distance, but she was no longer crying. She was just watching Sarah with those curious little eyes. William returned to his study without making a sound. Maybe there was something to this strange method after all. Maybe children really needed someone who didn't pressure them, who didn't have heavy expectations on their shoulders. At lunch, Mrs. Vance prepared a light soup and toast. Megan tried to offer it to the girls, who refused as always. Sarah ate her portion in silence, sitting at the kitchen table, thanked her politely and went back to the room. William followed her. "How's it going?" he asked in the hallway. "Well, they're not as scared when I enter the room anymore, that's progress. But they're not eating. No, they're not." Sarah met his gaze. "Mr. Ashford, you know this is going to take time, right? I can't work magic. Their trauma is deep. They were forced, they were afraid of choking. Their minds have associated food with danger. I first need to make them feel safe again, to trust me. Only then can we work on the eating issue." "How long do you think it will take?" "I don't know. It could be a week, it could be a month. Every child is different." "A month?" William felt panic rise in his throat. "They don't have a month. The doctors said they'll need a feeding tube soon." "I know, and I'll do my best to prevent that. But you have to trust the process." Easy for you to say trust when they're not your daughters wasting away. Sarah wasn't offended by his harsh tone. She just nodded. You're right. I'm sorry. I know it must be impossible for you to see this and not despair. But despair is exactly what the girls don't need right now. They can feel when we're anxious, terrified. And that only makes their fear worse. William ran a hand over his face, exhausted. He was doing his best not to fall apart in front of his daughters, but he was at his limit. I'll let you continue. In the afternoon, William peeked into the room again. Sarah had turned on the radio quietly to a station playing soft music. She hummed along with some of the songs while she drew. Emily was now sitting much closer, less than 6 feet away. She was looking at the drawings with obvious interest, though she still hadn't worked up the courage to speak. Sophia had also moved a little closer, holding her favorite teddy bear. At the end of the day, as Sarah was preparing to leave, Emily did something surprising. She stood up, walked over to her, and pointed at the drawing pad. Sarah smiled. Do you want to see the drawings up close? Emily nodded shyly. Sarah knelt down and showed her the pages of the pad, explaining each drawing. The girl looked fascinated. Sophia watched from a distance, not yet as brave as her older sister. I can leave the pad here with you, if you like, Sarah offered. Tomorrow I'll bring more colored pencils and we can draw together. How about that? Emily looked at her father, seeking approval. William nodded yes, feeling a lump in his throat. It was the first time in a month he had seen his daughter show genuine interest in anything. After Sarah left, William thought about the day. Objectively, nothing had changed. The girls still weren't eating, but there was something different in the air, a lightness that hadn't been there before. Emily was less apathetic. Sophia had cried less. They were small changes, almost imperceptible, but they were there. That night, when he went to say goodnight to his daughters, he found Emily flipping through the drawing pad Sarah had left. The girl looked up at him with those huge eyes. Daddy, is she coming back tomorrow? Yes, she is, sweetheart. Sarah is coming back. Emily seemed satisfied with the answer and snuggled into her pillow, hugging the pad. For the first time in a long time, she fell asleep without crying. William left the room and found Mrs. Vance in the hallway. The housekeeper smiled with that look of someone who had been right all along but was too polite to rub it in. I told you, Mr. Ashford, that young woman has a gift. It's too early to celebrate. They're still not eating. But they're calmer. That's the first step. William wanted to believe that. He needed to believe it. Because the alternative, seeing his daughters hospitalized, connected to machines, was too unbearable to contemplate. The following days dragged on in a strange and frustrating routine. Sarah arrived every morning at 9:30 in her simple clothes and worn bag, and spent the entire day in the room with the girls. She sang old songs William didn't know, gentle melodies that seemed to come from some distant place in her childhood. She read stories in a low voice, drew, sometimes just sat in silence watching the clouds through the window. She never mentioned food. She never pressured the girls to do anything. She simply existed there, a calm and constant presence amidst the emotional chaos of the house. Emily and Sophia gradually opened up. On the third day, Emily finally spoke to Sarah, asking if she knew how to draw butterflies. Sarah smiled and drew the most beautiful butterfly she could, with colorful and detailed wings. Emily was enchanted. On the fourth day, Sophia let Sarah take her teddy bear to show her how to braid the toy's fur. They were small victories, crumbs of progress in an ocean of anguish, but they didn't eat. That was the relentless, terrifying fact that William couldn't ignore. As much as the girls were calmer, more interactive with Sarah, they continued to refuse any solid food. They accepted a few sips of milk, small amounts of water, nothing more. Their faces grew thinner, their arms skinnier. William watched his daughters waste away before his very eyes, and the feeling of helplessness was devastating. On the morning of the fifth day, he exploded. He found Sarah in the kitchen having coffee before going to the room and could no longer hold back his accumulated frustration. "It's been almost a week," William said, his voice harsher than he intended. "A whole week and my daughters still haven't eaten anything. Absolutely nothing. You sit in there singing songs and drawing flowers while they're starving to death." Sarah placed her coffee cup on the counter carefully. She looked at him without fear, but there was understanding in those brown eyes. "I know. You're desperate, Mr. Ashford. I know that every day that passes without them eating is torture for you. But what do you want me to do? Force food down their throats? That's exactly what caused the initial trauma." "No, I don't want that. But I'm also not seeing any results from your magic method. Maybe Eleanor was wrong. Maybe you're not the right person for this." "Maybe I'm not." Sarah didn't seem offended, just honest. "I never guaranteed I could help. I said I would try, and I am trying. But if you think it's better for me to leave, I will respect your decision. They are your daughters." William ran his hands through his hair, pulling hard, feeling the anger and fear mix into a toxic cocktail. "I don't know what to do anymore. The doctors want to hospitalize them next week if there's no improvement. They're going to stick tubes in them, Sarah, tubes through their noses to force-feed them. How am I going to explain that to two little girls who are already traumatized? How?" His voice broke at the end, and to his surprise, tears began to stream down his face. William turned his back, ashamed to cry in front of an employee, a stranger, but he couldn't stop. All the accumulated stress, all the sleepless nights, all the terror of losing his daughters came pouring out in an uncontrollable flood. Sarah approached slowly. She placed a hand on his shoulder, a light, respectful touch. "Mr. Ashford, your daughters are not starving to death. They're weak, yes, but they're still taking in liquids. They have reserves. We just need a little more time, just a few more days." "We don't have more days," he said in a choked voice. "Can't you see how they are? They look like ghosts of my daughters. Where is their joy, their energy? Where are my girls? They're here, just hurt. But wounds heal, Mr. Ashford. They just need time and a safe space to heal. And what if they don't heal in time? What if hospitalization is inevitable? Then we'll deal with that when the time comes, but don't give up now, please. I have a plan, something I want to try tomorrow. If it doesn't work, I'll leave and never bother you again. But give me one more day." William turned to her, wiping his face with the back of his hands. "What plan?" "You have to trust me. It's going to seem strange, but there's a method to it, I promise." He wanted to scream that he didn't trust her, that he was fed up with empty promises and mysterious methods, but he looked at Sarah and saw something in her eyes that made him hesitate. It wasn't arrogance or false confidence. It was experience, the certainty of someone who had been through the fire and come out the other side. "One more day," William finally agreed, his voice tired. "But it's the last chance. If there's no change tomorrow, I'm going ahead with what the doctors recommend." "I understand, and thank you for trusting me this far." After that conversation, William stayed in his study all day, unable to work, but also unable to go to the girls' room. He was afraid of what he would see. He was afraid that Emily and Sophia would be even weaker, even more faded. Mrs. Vance brought him lunch on a tray, but he barely touched the food. How could he eat when his daughters wouldn't? In the afternoon, Megan knocked on the study door. She entered with a worried expression. "Mr. Ashford, the girls are asking for you. I think you should go see them." William's heart pounded. Had something happened? Had they gotten worse? He stood up so quickly the chair nearly tipped over and ran to the room. When he entered, he found Emily and Sophia sitting on the floor with Sarah. The three were looking at an open children's book between them. "Daddy," Emily said when she saw him, her voice weak but excited. "Sarah is telling the story of the princess who lived in the forest." William felt his chest tighten. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Can I listen too?" "Yes, you can." He sat on the floor next to his daughters, something he hadn't done in weeks. Sophia immediately snuggled into his lap, her body too light, frighteningly light. Emily leaned against his arm. Sarah continued reading the story in that soft, melodious voice, making different voices for each character. The girls giggled softly at times, reacted with surprise at others. There, in that simple moment of a shared story, William felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, a spark of normalcy. For a few minutes they could pretend they were a normal family, without trauma, without fears, without the crushing weight of the situation. It was just a father and two daughters, listening to a story told by someone who, strangely, no longer seemed like a complete stranger. When the story ended, Sarah closed the book. Emily yawned and Sophia rubbed her eyes. It was time for their afternoon nap. "I'll let you rest," Sarah said, standing up. "I'll continue the story tomorrow, okay?" The girls nodded sleepily. William put them in bed, covered them carefully, and kissed their warm foreheads. They fell asleep almost instantly, exhausted. He left the room with Sarah and closed the door slowly. In the hallway, William turned to her. "Thank you. For trying, I mean. I know it hasn't been easy, and I haven't exactly been friendly." "You have every right to be frustrated. They are your daughters." Sarah adjusted the bag on her shoulder. "I'm bringing my daughter with me tomorrow, if you'll allow it. She's 8 years old, very sweet. I think she can help." "Your daughter?" William frowned. "Why do you think that?" "Children connect with other children differently. Emily and Sophia see me as an adult, someone who could potentially force them to do things they don't want to. But another child? There's no power dynamic. They might feel more comfortable." "And you think your daughter will be able to do what you couldn't? It's not about succeeding or not. It's about creating an environment where they feel safe enough to try." Sarah looked directly at him. "Trust me one more time. Please." William had no more strength to argue. "All right, bring your daughter tomorrow. But Sarah, if this doesn't work, I'm really going to have to go ahead with the hospitalization. I have no choice." "I know, and you'll do what's best for your daughters. Any father would." After she left, William went back to his study and watched the night fall over New York City. The city lights began to turn on, thousands of illuminated windows hiding thousands of stories. How many other families were going through their own silent battles? How many other fathers were desperate, searching for answers that no one seemed to have? Mrs. Vance appeared at the door with a cup of tea. "I brought you some chamomile. It will help you sleep." William gratefully accepted the hot drink. Eleanor sat in the armchair opposite his desk, something she rarely did. She usually maintained the professional distance between employer and employee, but there was a different intimacy between them now, forged by years of living together and the terrible circumstances of the past few weeks. "She's a good person, Mr. Ashford. Sarah, I know you're impatient, but she really cares." "How do you know that?" "I see it in the way she looks at the girls. It's not the look of someone doing a job. It's the look of someone who understands another's pain because she's felt her own." William took a sip of tea. "She's bringing her daughter tomorrow. An 8-year-old girl. I don't know what to expect from that. I think it's a good idea. Emily and Sophia need someone their own age. It's been a long time since they've played with other children." It was true. Since the incident, William had avoided taking the girls to the building's playground or allowing visits from other children. He was afraid they would be further traumatized, that they would be forced into social situations they weren't ready to face. But maybe it had been a mistake to isolate them so much. "Tomorrow will work out, Mr. Ashford. I have faith. I wish I had your certainty." "Faith isn't about being certain. It's about believing even without guarantees." William smiled sadly. When had Eleanor become a philosopher? But her words brought a small measure of comfort. Maybe that's what was missing. Faith, hope, the courage to believe that things could get better even when everything seemed lost. That night, William managed to sleep for a few consecutive hours for the first time in days. He dreamed of Emily and Sophia running in a sunny garden, laughing, full of life. When he woke up and realized it was just a dream, the sadness was like a punch to the gut. But there was something different too, a small flame of hope, fragile and flickering, but there. The next morning, William woke up with his stomach in knots from anxiety. It was the 6th day since Sarah had started working with the girls, the last day he had promised to give her before proceeding with hospitalization. If nothing happened today, he would call Dr. Peterson early tomorrow and start the procedures. The mere thought made his heart ache, but there were no more alternatives. The girls were getting dangerously weak. At 9:30 sharp, the doorbell rang. William opened the door and found Sarah accompanied by a little girl. Her daughter, he immediately presumed. The girl had light brown hair in two pigtails, bright green eyes, and a shy but genuine smile. She wore a school uniform, a white blouse and navy blue skirt with worn but clean pink sneakers. She carried a small backpack. "Good morning, Mr. Ashford. This is my daughter, Grace." William crouched down to the girl's level, forcing a smile despite the tension he felt. "Hello, Grace. Welcome." "Hi," the girl said softly, hiding a little behind her mother. "You said you have two girls here." "I do. Emily is 4 and Sophia is 2. I'm sure you'll all get along." Grace seemed to brighten up a bit at that. "I like playing with younger kids. At school, I sometimes look after the little ones during recess." "How kind of you." They entered the apartment. Grace looked around with wide eyes, clearly impressed by the size and luxury of the place, but she made no comment. Sarah placed a comforting and protective hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Grace came straight from school," Sarah explained. "She knows about your daughter's situation and wants to help. I talked to her a lot yesterday about how to behave, about being patient and gentle." "I understand." William was still skeptical about how exactly an 8-year-old could help where specialized doctors had failed, but he had promised to trust Sarah's process for one more day. "Let's go to the kitchen first," Sarah said, picking up the bag she was carrying. "I need to prepare a few things." In the kitchen, Sarah began to take ingredients out of the bag. Flour, eggs, milk, cinnamon, vanilla, sugar. William watched, confused. What did she intend to do? "We're going to make waffles," Sarah announced, placing everything on the marble countertop. "It's a tradition of ours, mine and Grace's. Every Thursday, without fail, we make waffles together. The recipe is from my grandmother." "Today is Thursday," Grace added proudly. "Waffle day." William felt irritation rise in his throat. "Wait a moment. You brought your daughter here to cook. Is this your grand plan? To make waffles while my daughters haven't eaten in over a month?" Sarah continued organizing the ingredients without seeming disturbed by his tone. "Exactly. Trust me. I've trusted you for almost a week. And what have we achieved? Nothing. My daughters are still not eating. And now you want to make an afternoon snack as if that's going to solve anything." "Mr. Ashford," Sarah finally stopped and looked directly at him. "You promised me today. I'm asking you to keep your promise. Let me do this my way. If it doesn't work, I'll never come back here. But please give me these next few hours." Grace watched the exchange with worried eyes, clearly uncomfortable with the tension in the air. William realized he was scaring the girl and composed himself. He took a deep breath, trying to control his frustration and fear. "Fine, make your waffles. I'll be in my study if you need me." He stormed out of the kitchen, feeling ridiculous. Waffles. His daughter's future depended on homemade waffles. It was too absurd to believe. He sat in his study and tried to work, but the words in the documents made no sense. His mind was completely focused on what was happening in the rest of the apartment. In the kitchen, Sarah helped Grace wash her hands and tie on a child's apron she had brought from home. "Mommy, do you think it will work?" the girl asked quietly. "I don't know, my love, but we're going to try our best, okay? Remember what we talked about? You're not going to offer them food. You're not going to insist. Just be yourself. Have fun making waffles with me like we always do." "Okay. Can I start by cracking the eggs?" "Yes, you can." As mother and daughter worked in the kitchen, chatting animatedly about Grace's school, about a funny teacher, about a science project they had to do, the aroma began to spread through the apartment. Cinnamon and vanilla melted. Butter, golden batter cooking. A homey, comforting smell that completely contrasted with the sterile and tense atmosphere that had dominated the place for the past few weeks. In their room, Emily and Sophia were playing quietly with building blocks when the smell reached them. Emily lifted her head, sniffing the air like a curious puppy. Sophia noticed too, dropping her blocks. Megan, who was supervising, saw their interest and stood up. "Do you want to go see what's happening in the kitchen?" The two girls looked at each other, then at Megan. Emily nodded shyly. Sophia held her older sister's hand. Together, with Megan close behind, they walked down the hallway towards the kitchen. They stopped at the kitchen door. Sarah was in front of the stove, using the rarely used waffle maker. Grace was next to her on a stool, stirring a bowl vigorously. The two were talking and laughing, completely absorbed in what they were doing. And then the teacher said, "My drawing of the cell was so beautiful, she was going to hang it on the classroom wall," Grace was saying excitedly. "I'm so proud, my love. You really did a great job on that drawing. It was the best in the class. Even Jason, who's the smartest, said mine was better than his." Sarah turned to get a plate and noticed the three at the door. She smiled naturally, without exaggeration. "Hello, girls. Did you come to see what we're doing?" Emily and Sophia didn't answer, but they didn't run back to their room either. They stood there, watching. Grace looked at them and gave a huge, genuine smile. "Hi, I'm Grace. My mom and I are making waffles. We do it every Thursday. It's our tradition." The girls just stared, but there was evident curiosity in their faces. The delicious smell filled the kitchen, impossible to ignore. "Want to try putting some batter in the machine?" Sarah offered to Grace, as if Emily and Sophia weren't even there. "It's your favorite part." "Yes, I do." Grace took the ladle and carefully poured batter into the hot waffle maker. The familiar sizzle and the steam that rose made her eyes shine. It's always so cool to see the batter turn into a waffle. Emily took a step into the kitchen. Just a small, hesitant step, but a step. Sophia followed, clinging to her hand. Megan stayed, behind, watching in silence, barely daring to breathe for fear of breaking the moment. Sarah took out the first finished waffle and placed it on a plate. "Grace, want to put the syrup on?" "I do." The girl grabbed a small bottle of maple syrup and poured it carefully over the warm, golden waffle. "My mum makes the best waffles in the whole world. The batter is special. There's a secret my great-grandmother taught her." Grace cut a piece and ate it with obvious satisfaction, closing her eyes and making that exaggerated expression of pleasure that children make when something is truly delicious. It's perfect, Mommy." Emily was now just a few steps from the counter. She watched Grace eat, saw the genuine joy on the older girl's face. There was no pressure there, no adult telling her she had to eat, no anxious eyes waiting for her to try it. It was just a girl eating waffles with her mother on a normal Thursday. Sarah put more batter in the machine, keeping her actions natural and carefree. She chatted with Grace about trivial things, about what she was going to do over the weekend, about her upcoming birthday. The kitchen was full of life and normalcy, something that had been completely lacking in that apartment for so long. Sophia let go of Emily's hand and took 2 small steps forward. Her nostrils flared, trying to better capture that wonderful smell. Grace noticed and smiled at the little one. "Do you want to smell it up close? It smells really good." Sophia looked at Grace's mother, seeking silent permission. Sarah just smiled and nodded that it was okay. The girl moved closer, standing on her tiptoes to get a better look at the waffle on the plate. Grace picked up the plate and lowered it to Sophia's level. "See? It's still warm, steaming. My mom always lets it cool a little before I eat so I don't burn my tongue." Emily approached now too, curiosity overcoming fear. She stood next to her sister, looking at that golden, fragrant waffle. Grace broke off another small piece and ate it, chewing with visible satisfaction. "Do you want to try some?" Grace offered with total naturalness, no pressure in her voice, just a child sharing something tasty with other children. "There's plenty. My mom always makes a lot." The silence that followed seemed to stretch for an eternity. William, who had left his study unable to stay away and was now watching from hiding in the hallway, held his breath. Megan was also frozen. Sarah continued what she was doing as if nothing special was happening, though her heart was pounding. Emily extended her trembling little hand. Grace placed a tiny piece of waffle in her palm. The girl looked at it as if it was something alien, dangerous. She sniffed it, cautiously. Sophia watched her sister with full attention. Emily brought the piece to her mouth. She hesitated. She looked at Grace, who was smiling encouragingly but without anxiety. Then, miraculously, she put it in her mouth. She chewed slowly, experimentally. Her little eyes widened. She swallowed. The first solid food in 35 days had passed down Emily's throat. The girl didn't choke, didn't get scared, didn't start crying. She just stood there, processing the sensation. Then she looked at Grace and made a small movement with her head, as if asking for more. Grace, without making a fuss, offered another small piece. Emily accepted. She ate. Sophia, seeing her sister eat without any problem, also extended her little hand. Grace gave her a piece too. The little one sniffed it, hesitated, but seeing Emily eating calmly, she brought it to her mouth. She chewed carefully. She swallowed. In the hallway, William felt his legs give way. He had to lean against the wall to keep from falling. Tears streamed down his face without any control. His daughters were eating. After more than a month of absolute refusal, of terror and trauma, they were voluntarily eating. Not because someone forced them, not because some doctor explained complex theories, but because an 8-year-old girl shared waffles with them on a Thursday morning. Mrs. Vance appeared in the hallway coming from the laundry room and saw William crying. She ran to him, frightened. "Mr. Ashford, what happened? The girls. They're eating," he managed to say between sobs. "Eleanor, they're eating." The housekeeper brought her hands to her mouth, her own eyes filling with tears. "Thank God. Thank God." In the kitchen, Sarah continued making waffles as if it were the most normal thing in the world, though her heart was racing and she had to blink several times to hold back her emotions. Grace chatted animatedly with Emily and Sophia, telling funny stories from school, making the girls smile shyly. The three of them ate a few more pieces. Not much, just enough. But it was infinitely more than nothing. After a few minutes, William composed himself enough to enter the kitchen. Emily and Sophia ran to him immediately. "Daddy, Daddy, we ate waffles," Emily said with an excited voice he hadn't heard in so long. "It's so yummy." William knelt and hugged his two daughters tightly, unable to hold back his tears. "See, my loves? See that you don't have to be afraid. Food won't hurt you. Grace's mom's waffles are special," Sophia said in her tiny voice. "It tastes like happy." The sweet, childish phrase made everyone in the kitchen laugh. Sarah discreetly wiped her own eyes. Grace smiled proudly. Megan couldn't stop smiling either. William stood up and walked over to Sarah. For a moment he didn't know what to say. How do you thank someone who had just saved your daughters when you had completely lost hope? How do you express the deep, overwhelming gratitude you felt? "You were right," he said simply, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm sorry for doubting you. I'm sorry for being so difficult. You saved my daughters." "I didn't save them alone," Sarah replied, placing a hand on Grace's shoulder. "This little lady here was essential. Children connect with other children in ways we adults can't." Grace blushed at the compliment. "I just shared my waffle. It was no big deal." "It was," William said, crouching down to her level. "It was everything. Thank you, Grace. Truly." The girl smiled shyly. "You're welcome. Can I come play with Emily and Sophia more often?" "You can come whenever you want." The rest of the morning passed in a completely transformed atmosphere. Emily and Sophia played with Grace in the living room, really played, with an energy that seemed to have resurfaced from nowhere. William watched, still in shock, still processing the miracle he had just witnessed. Mrs. Vance prepared a light lunch, and the girls, encouraged by Grace's presence, ate a few small pieces of grilled chicken and cooked carrots. Not much, but they ate. In the afternoon, when Grace had to leave for tutoring, Emily and Sophia hugged the girl as if they were old friends. Grace promised to come back the next day if her mother could bring her. After mother and daughter left, William asked Sarah to stay a little longer. "We need to talk." They sat in the living room while the girls napped in their room, exhausted but content. William didn't know where to begin. So many emotions, so many thoughts swirling in his head. "How did you know it would work?" he asked. "How did you know waffles and your daughter would do what 5 specialists couldn't?" Sarah settled on the sofa before answering. "I didn't know if it would work, to be honest. It was a gamble. But I knew my daughters and I knew the situation. Traumatized children associate food with danger when they are forced. Everyone who tried to feed Emily and Sophia came loaded with anxiety, fear, expectation. The girls felt that and became even more scared. They needed someone who didn't have those heavy emotions. And that's why you brought Grace. Exactly. Grace has no history with your daughters. She doesn't carry the weight of the trauma. For her, she was just eating waffles on a normal Thursday, something she does every week. There was no pressure, anxiety, or fear. It was genuine and light. Children pick up on these things. Emily and Sophia saw that Grace was happy and safe eating, and that broke their mental association between food and danger. It's so simple when you explain it like that, but none of the specialists suggested anything similar. Because specialists think in medical and psychological terms, they think about traumas, therapies, gradual processes, and all of that has value, don't get me wrong, but sometimes the most effective solution is the most human and simple one. Genuine connection, shared joy, safety demonstrated through natural action. William was silent for a few moments. You said you went through something similar with your daughter, that she stopped talking after witnessing an argument. Yes. Sarah looked at her own hands. It was 5 years ago. My ex-husband and I were going through a very difficult period. He drank, became aggressive. He didn't hit me, but he would yell, break things, say horrible words. One night, Grace woke up and saw everything. She was only 3. The next day, she didn't say another word. I was desperate. I took her to public health doctors, but the lines were long and the care was poor. No one could tell me exactly what to do, only that I needed to be patient. And what did you do? I left my ex-husband immediately. That night was the limit for me. I took Grace and went to live with my mother. Then I started to rebuild our lives. I worked during the day, and at night I would just be with her. I didn't pressure her to talk. I didn't show anxiety. I read everything I could find about childhood trauma in library books. I learned that children need to feel in control of their own lives again after going through something traumatic. So I gave Grace choices. I'd ask if she wanted to wear the blue dress or the red one, if she wanted to eat an apple or a banana. Simple things, but they put her in charge. Slowly, over 2 months, she started talking again. That must have been terrifying. It was. I thought I had lost my daughter forever, that she would never be the same. Sarah smiled faintly. But children are stronger than we imagine. They recover when they're given the right environment. Emily and Sophia will be fine now. It won't be immediate. They'll have setbacks, difficult moments, but the worst is over. And your daughter, Grace? William asked. She seems so well-adjusted, so happy. You mentioned she has a heart problem. Yes, a congenital heart defect. She was diagnosed when she was 1. She needs constant monitoring, expensive medications, regular appointments with a specialist. That's why I work so much. Public health covers part of it, but I have to pay for a lot out of pocket. That must be very difficult. It is. But she's my daughter. I would do anything for her. Sarah looked at William. Just as you would do anything for your daughters. I saw that from the first day I came here. The desperation in your eyes, it's the same desperation I saw in the mirror during those 2 months. Grace was silent. William felt a deep connection with this woman at that moment. They were so different in so many ways, from completely separate worlds. But they shared something fundamental, the unconditional love for their children and the willingness to do anything to protect them. I want to hire you officially, he said suddenly, not as a cleaner, but as the girl's caregiver. With a fair salary, full contract, all the benefits. The girls like you, and you clearly know what you're doing. Sarah seemed surprised. Mr. Ashford, you don't have to do that. I came here to help, not expecting a job or payment. I know, but I'm offering anyway. My daughters need you, and frankly, I think you would be great in this role. Sarah was silent, clearly considering. It's a generous offer, but I need to think about it. I have my other jobs, my routine with Grace. I'd have to organize everything. Take your time. You don't have to decide now, but the offer stands. Thank you, I will think about it. They talked a little more about the plan for the next few days. Sarah suggested she continue coming daily for at least 2 weeks to ensure Emily and Sophia maintained their progress. William agreed immediately. Then she left, promising to return the next day. That night was the first in over a month that William managed to sleep soundly. Emily and Sophia had soup and bread for dinner, not much, but enough. When he went to say goodnight, the two were excitedly talking about Grace and the waffles. "Daddy, can we make waffles again tomorrow?" Emily asked. "Of course, sweetheart. As many times as you want. And can Grace come play with us again?" "Yes, Sarah said she'll bring her whenever she can." Emily smiled, a smile William hadn't seen in so long. "I like Sarah. She's nice." "I like her too," William admitted. "She helped you a lot." Sophia was almost asleep, but she murmured drowsily, "Sarah smells nice. She smells like a mommy." His youngest daughter's words hit William like an unexpected punch. Smells like a mommy. Sophia had no memories of Catherine. For her, the maternal figure was an abstraction, something that existed in books and cartoons, but not in real life. But she had recognized something in Sarah, something motherly and comforting that was missing in their lives. William kissed both girls on the forehead and left the room with a heavy heart. Catherine. How long had it been since he'd thought of her? His ex-wife had become almost a character in a story, someone who existed briefly but vanished like smoke. 2 weeks had passed since the miraculous day of the waffles. The apartment had been completely transformed. Emily and Sophia were now eating regularly, still with some caution and in small portions, but they were eating. Color returned to their faces. Their arms began to regain lost weight. The pediatrician, Dr. Peterson, was impressed with their recovery when William took the girls for a follow-up appointment. He asked what method they had used, and William explained about Sarah and the waffles. The doctor just shook his head in amazement, admitting that sometimes formal medicine had its limitations. Sarah had accepted William's job offer after 3 days of consideration. She had a long talk with her mother, reorganized her life and her other jobs. Now she arrived every morning at 8, spent the entire day with Emily and Sophia, and left at 5 in the afternoon. Grace came 2 or 3 times a week after school, and the 3 girls had become inseparable. The apartment that once felt like a silent mausoleum was now always filled with laughter, children's songs, games, and life. William observed it all with a mixture of gratitude and something else he couldn't quite name yet. Sarah brought a lightness to the house that he didn't know was possible. It wasn't just the work she did with the girls, though that was extraordinary. It was her presence itself, the way she hummed while preparing the afternoon snack, how she told stories with funny voices that made the children roar with laughter, how she turned simple tasks like tidying up toys into fun games. She had a natural gift for finding joy in the little things, something William had long since lost. One Saturday morning, William woke up to noise coming from the kitchen. Puzzled, since Sarah didn't work on weekends, he got up and went to investigate. He found Emily and Sophia sitting at the table, still in their pajamas, eating pancakes that Mrs. Vance had prepared. The two were chatting excitedly about a cartoon they had watched. "Good morning, Daddy," Emily said when she saw him, her mouth full of pancake. Mrs. Vance made pancakes with chocolate. William kissed them both on the forehead and poured himself some coffee. "You're up early today." "We want to go to the park," Sophia announced. "We haven't been in a long time." It was true. Since the incident with the previous nanny, William had avoided taking the girls to public places. He was afraid something would scare them again, that they would regress, but looking at them now, so full of energy and life, he realized he was being overprotective. "All right, we'll go to the park after breakfast, but you need to finish eating properly." The girls agreed excitedly. As they finished their breakfast, William thought about how much everything had changed. A month ago, they could barely look at food without starting to cry. Now they were asking to go to the park like any normal children. Sarah was right. Children were resilient when given the right environment to heal. At the park, Emily and Sophia ran to the playground, shouting with joy. William sat on a nearby bench, watching. Other children were playing too, mothers and fathers chatting in groups. It was such a common, everyday scene, but to William it felt like a miracle. His daughters were back. Not completely healed from all the trauma, there were still difficult moments, but they were getting better every day. A woman sat on the bench next to him. She was in her 40s with blonde hair tied in a ponytail, wearing workout clothes. "Your kids?" she asked kindly, pointing to Emily and Sophia. "Yes, the 2 in the pink dresses." "They're beautiful. How old are they?" 4 and 2. The woman smiled. A lovely age. Hard work, but lovely. She looked at her own daughters playing on the slide. Mine are 6 and 8. They're more independent now, thank God. William nodded, not really wanting to make small talk, but the woman continued talking about schools, extracurricular activities, the difficulties of modern motherhood. He only half listened, his attention focused on his daughters. When they got home, the girls were tired but happy. Mrs. Vance prepared lunch, and they ate well, trying everything that was served. After their afternoon nap, William called Sarah on an impulse. She had given him her cell number for emergencies. Sarah, sorry to bother you on your day off. It's no bother, Mr. Ashford. Did something happen with the girls? No, nothing bad. In fact, the opposite. I took them to the park today. They played, ate well, they're great. I just wanted to thank you. All of this is because of you. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I'm so happy to hear that, but the credit goes to the girls. They did the hard work of recovering. Still, without you, none of this would have happened. Mr. Ashford, can I make a suggestion? Sarah said after a moment. Of course. Stop calling me Mr. Ashford. It sounds so formal. You can just call me William. Sarah laughed softly. All right, William. And you can just call me Sarah. Sarah. William tested the name. Sounds good. After he hung up, William realized he was smiling. Something as simple as a first name, but it changed the dynamic between them. It was no longer employer and employee. It was something closer, more personal. The following Monday, William had to travel to Aspen to oversee the opening of the new hotel in his chain. It would only be for 2 days, but the thought of leaving the girls made him anxious. Sarah noticed his concern. They'll be fine. I'll be here all day, and Mrs. Vance will be here at night. You don't need to worry. I know. It's just that after everything that's happened, I'm scared to be away. It's understandable. But William, you also need to take care of your life. Your business needs you. The girls will understand. She was right, as she usually was. William traveled to Aspen with his phone in his hand the whole time, expecting emergency calls. But the calls he received were all cheerful. Emily and Sophia calling to say good night, telling him about their day, asking him to come back soon, but without showing distress. Sarah sent photos of the girls playing, eating, smiling. Everything was fine. When William returned on Wednesday night, he found the 3 girls watching a movie in the living room. Emily and Sophia ran to hug him. We missed you, Daddy. I missed you too, my loves. I brought presents. He distributed the souvenirs he had bought in Aspen, artisanal chocolates, small stuffed animals, children's books. The girls were delighted. Sarah watched from the sofa with a gentle smile. I brought something for you too, William said, holding out a wrapped package. Sarah seemed surprised. For me? You didn't have to. I know. But I wanted to. She opened it carefully. It was a handmade wool shawl in shades of blue and green, soft and delicate. Sarah ran her fingers over the fabric in admiration. It's beautiful. Thank you so much. I saw it in a shop and thought it suited you. The colors reminded me of your eyes. Sarah met his gaze, and for a moment the air between them seemed to carry something different, something deeper than friendship or a professional relationship. But then Sophia asked Sarah to read another chapter of the book they were following, and the moment passed. That night, after Sarah had left and the girls were asleep, William stood on the apartment balcony looking out at the city. He thought about Sarah, about the way she had entered their lives and transformed everything. It wasn't just her extraordinary work with Emily and Sophia. It was the person she was. Strong, dignified, cheerful despite all her difficulties, a single mother working multiple jobs to care for a sick daughter, yet still finding the time and energy to help others. William realized with sudden clarity that he was developing feelings for her, feelings that went beyond gratitude or professional admiration. It was genuine attraction, deep respect, a desire to be near her. But at the same time he felt guilty. Sarah was his employee. There was a power imbalance there. She depended on his salary to survive, to care for Grace. It would be wrong, perhaps even predatory, to make any kind of advance. He decided to keep an emotional distance. He would be polite, respectful, grateful, but he wouldn't let his feelings grow. It was the right thing to do. In the following days, William tried to implement his decision. He greeted Sarah formally in the mornings, avoided long conversations, kept their interactions strictly professional. Sarah noticed the change but said nothing. She just continued her work with the girls, always competent and caring. But life has a way of complicating plans. One Thursday afternoon, William came home early from a meeting and heard music coming from the kitchen. He approached quietly and saw Sarah dancing with Emily and Sophia. The three were spinning around the kitchen laughing, while some old song played on the radio. Emily sang along off-key and loud. Sophia just laughed, trying to keep up with the others' steps. Sarah spun around and noticed William at the door. She stopped dancing, a little embarrassed. "Sorry, we were making a mess." "No need to apologize, it's beautiful to see." "Daddy, come dance with us," Emily pleaded, holding out her little hands. William hesitated for just a second before stepping into the kitchen. Emily took one of his hands, Sophia the other. Sarah watched with a smile on her lips. And then, without much thought, William took her hand too. The four of them formed a circle and danced, laughing and spinning around the kitchen, which was flooded with the golden light of the late afternoon. In that moment, William gave up fighting against what he felt. He didn't know how or if anything could happen between them, but he knew that Sarah and Grace had become an essential part of his and the girls' lives. They were family now, in all the ways that mattered. That night, after the girls were asleep and Sarah was leaving, William stopped her at the door. "Sarah, can I talk to you for a minute?" "Of course." They sat in the living room. William was nervous, not sure how to begin. "I wanted to tell you something. I've been thinking about Grace and her treatment." Sarah tensed immediately. "If something happened with the girls because of Grace's condition, I understand. I can stop bringing her here." "No, it's nothing like that. In fact, it's the opposite. I want to help. I know the treatment is expensive, and you work so hard to cover the costs. I want to pay for her next 5 years of treatment. All costs, no exceptions." Sarah stared at him as if she hadn't understood. Then she shook her head. "I can't accept that." "Why not? I can afford it, and I want to do it. Grace helped my daughters just as much as you did. She deserves to have the best possible treatment." "William, that would be too much money. I can't just accept charity." "It's not charity, it's reciprocation, it's fair. Please, let me do this." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She blinked several times, trying to control them. "It's too generous, I don't know what to say." "Say yes." Sarah was silent for a long moment. Finally, she nodded. "But as a loan, I'll pay you back, slowly, monthly." "Sarah, you don't have to." "Yes, I do." She looked at him firmly through her tears. "It's a matter of dignity for me. I've always supported myself, always taken care of my daughter without depending on anyone. If I accept this money as a gift, I'll feel like I've lost that. But as a loan, I can keep my pride intact." William understood. This wasn't about money for her, it was about autonomy, about personal strength, about not being seen as an object of pity. He admired her even more for it. "All right, as a loan then. No interest and with a term you determine." "Thank you. Truly." Sarah wiped her eyes. "This will change Grace's life. She'll be able to have the best doctors, the best treatments. I won't have to choose between paying for her medicine or buying food anymore." It was William's turn to feel emotion tighten his throat. What kind of life had she been living that she had to make these impossible choices? And yet she remained strong, cheerful, generous. She was an extraordinary woman. After Sarah left, William stayed up for hours thinking about her, about the smile that lit up her whole face, the strength that emanated from her despite her physical fragility, the dignity she maintained despite all the difficulties. He was in love. There was no more denying or running from it. He was completely, hopelessly in love with Sarah. He got out of bed and went to his study. He sat in the leather armchair and looked out the window. New York City never fully slept. There were always lights flashing, cars passing, life happening even in the deepest hours of the night. William thought of all the people in that immense city, each with their own stories, struggles, joys, and sorrows. How many of them had found someone special, like he had found Sarah? How many had been given a second chance at happiness when they thought all was lost? He picked up his phone and opened the photo gallery. He scrolled through the recent images. Emily and Sophia playing in the park that weekend. The three girls eating ice cream, their faces smeared and smiling. Sarah helping Grace with her homework at the kitchen table. Each photo told a story of recovery, of healing, of love growing where there had once been only pain and fear. He stopped at a specific photo taken the week before. It was from the moment they had all danced together in the kitchen, that magical afternoon that now seemed to have changed everything. The image was a bit blurry, captured by Mrs. Vance, who had been passing by and couldn't resist recording the scene. William, Sarah, Emily, Sophia, and Grace, all holding hands in a circle, spinning and laughing. It wasn't a technically perfect photo, but it was perfect, in every other sense. It captured pure joy, genuine connection, a love that transcended any formal definition of family. William saved the photo as his phone's wallpaper. Then, on an impulse, he sent a message to Sarah. He knew she was probably already asleep, but he needed to express what he felt before his courage failed him. "Sarah, I know it's late and you must be asleep, but I need to say something. You changed my life and my daughter's lives in ways I'll never be able to fully thank you for. And in the process, without realizing it, I fell in love with you completely. I don't expect you to answer now or to feel the same. I just needed you to know good night." He sent it before he could regret it. He stared at the phone screen, his heart pounding. The minutes passed with no reply. Of course she was asleep. It was almost 2 a.m. William started to regret sending it. He should have waited, found the right moment, spoken in person. Then his phone vibrated. A message from Sarah. "I'm not asleep. I was thinking about you too. Can we talk tomorrow, in person? There are things I need to say too." William felt hope bloom in his chest. "Yes, we'll talk tomorrow." He finally managed to sleep, his heart lighter than it had been in a very, very long time. He didn't know what the future would bring, but for the first time in years he was eager to find out. The following months were the happiest William could remember in years. Emily and Sophia were completely recovered. They ate normally, played with energy, and laughed constantly. The trauma hadn't completely disappeared. There were still moments when they became nervous around food, in very specific situations, but these episodes were rare and manageable. Sarah knew exactly how to handle them, always with a patience and calm that instantly soothed the girls. Grace visited almost every day now. The three girls were practically sisters, inventing elaborate games, creating imaginary worlds, sharing secrets and laughter. William had hired the best cardiac specialists for Grace, and her treatment was going exceptionally well. The girl had more energy, fewer episodes of fatigue. Sarah cried with gratitude when the doctor said that with proper treatment, Grace could have a completely normal life. William and Sarah had developed a comfortable routine. In the mornings when she arrived, they would talk about the previous day, about plans for the girls, about everyday trivialities. William discovered he loved listening to Sarah talk. She had a unique way of telling stories, turning simple events into captivating narratives. He also discovered she was a voracious reader, borrowing books from the public library and devouring 1 or 2 a week. He started leaving books from his own library for her, and they would discuss their readings over breakfast. Mrs. Vance watched it all with a knowing smile. The housekeeper had known from the beginning that there was a special chemistry between those two, even when they themselves didn't realize it. She saw how William's eyes lit up when Sarah arrived, how Sarah blushed slightly when William complimented her, how they found excuses to prolong conversations, to stay in the same room. One Saturday afternoon, William decided to take everyone to the zoo. Emily and Sophia had never been, and they were ecstatic at the idea. Sarah initially hesitated, saying she didn't want to intrude on family time, but the girls insisted so much that she accepted. Grace came too, of course. At the zoo they walked as a cheerful group. The children ran from one enclosure to another, exclaiming in wonder at each animal. William carried Sophia on his shoulders when she got tired. Sarah held Grace's hand, But often the girl would let go to run with Emily to see something interesting. In those moments, William and Sarah walked side by side, and several times their hands accidentally touched. Neither of them commented, but they didn't pull away either. At the zoo's snack bar, they stopped for an afternoon treat. The three girls ate ice cream, getting completely messy. William and Sarah laughed at the mess they were making. A lady at a nearby table looked at the group and commented to her husband, loud enough to be heard, "What a beautiful family. The parents are young, but they seem to have everything under control." William and Sarah looked at each other, not sure whether to correct the misunderstanding. They ended up saying nothing, just smiling at each other with a certain embarrassment. But the idea lingered in the air. Family. They looked like a real family. And it wasn't an unpleasant feeling. On the way back, the three girls slept in the back seat of the car, exhausted and happy. William drove while Sarah sat in the passenger seat. The radio played some soft music quietly. "Thank you for today," Sarah said. "It was a wonderful day. Grace will be talking about it for weeks." "No need to thank me. I should be thanking you for coming. The girls loved having you and Grace with them. They're special. Emily and Sophia. They've become so important to me." "You've become important to me too," William said, keeping his eyes on the road but feeling his heart race. "You and Grace, I don't know what our lives would be like without you anymore." Sarah didn't answer immediately. When William risked a glance, he saw she was looking out the window, but there was a gentle smile on her lips. In the following days, William began to notice subtle changes in Sarah's behavior. She lingered longer at goodbyes, seemed to look for excuses to start conversations. She smiled more when he entered the room. She wore the shawl he had given her from Aspen almost every day. Were these signs that she felt something too? Or was William seeing things that weren't there, projecting his own feelings? One night, Jessica, his assistant, called with news about an important meeting in New York the following week. After settling the professional details, she asked how the girls were. "They're great, completely recovered." "That's good. And how is that young woman, Sarah, still working with you?" "Yes, she is. She's part of the family now." Jessica laughed on the other end of the line. "The way you talk about her, William, it sounds like she's become more than an employee." William felt his face heat up. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you do. I've worked with you for 8 years. I know all your tones of voice. I've never heard you talk about anyone the way you talk about her." "It's complicated, Jessica. It's only complicated if you let it be. Is she a good person? Does she make you happy? Does she make the girls happy?" "Yes, to all of the above." "Then what's the problem?" "The problem is she works for me. There's a power imbalance. If I show interest and she doesn't reciprocate, she might feel pressured or uncomfortable. She might even lose the job she needs to take care of her daughter. Or she might reciprocate and you could be happy together." Jessica sighed. "William, you've spent 2 years alone since Catherine left. You took care of the girls, built your empire, were strong for everyone. But what about you? When was the last time you thought about your own happiness?" "I don't have time to think about that." "Exactly the problem. Look, I'm not saying to do anything rash, but pay attention to the signs. If she shows interest too, it might be worth the risk." After he hung up, William thought about Jessica's words. Was she right? Was he being a coward, hiding behind professional excuses when in reality he was afraid to risk his heart again? The following week, something happened that forced William to confront his feelings. It was Friday night, and he had invited some business partners for dinner at the apartment. Business and company matters would be discussed, but in a more relaxed setting. Sarah didn't normally work at night, but William asked if she could stay to help Mrs. Vance with the girls during dinner. She accepted without hesitation. The partners arrived promptly at 8, 3 businessmen, all older than William, with their impeccably dressed and made-up wives. Mrs. Vance served appetizers in the living room while they talked about the expansion of the hotel chain. Emily and Sophia appeared in their pajamas to say goodnight, polite and adorable as always. The guests praised them effusively. After the girls went back to their room with Sarah, one of the wives, an elegant lady named Helen, commented, "Your daughters are beautiful, William. It must be a handful raising them alone." I have excellent help, William replied. Sarah, the young woman who was with them, is exceptional. Ah, yes, the nanny, Helen said with that slightly condescending tone that wealthy people sometimes use when talking about employees. She seems competent. Something in her tone deeply irritated William. She's not just a nanny, she's a specialized caregiver and a fundamental part of our family. One of the partners, a burly man named David, laughed. Careful, William, an employee who's too competent might start asking for a raise. William forced a polite laugh but was fuming inside. How dare they reduce Sarah to a mere employee? She who had saved his daughters, who had brought life back to this house, who worked tirelessly with dedication and love? The dinner proceeded normally, with business talk alternating with pleasantries. But William was distracted. At one point he needed to go to the girls' room to get a document he had left there. He found Sarah sitting between Emily and Sophia, reading a story in a low voice. The three were snuggled on the bed, completely at ease with each other. Grace had gone to sleep at her grandmother's that night. The scene hit him hard. There was everything that mattered. Not the business in the living room, not the money or status, but this extraordinary woman caring for his daughters as if they were her own, with authentic and unconditional love. Sarah noticed his presence and looked up. The girls are almost asleep. Thank you for staying late tonight. It's no problem. I know the dinner is important. William entered the room and sat in the small chair in the corner. It's not as important as you three. Sarah smiled and went back to reading. William stayed there watching for a few more minutes. When the girls finally fell asleep, Sarah stood up carefully and left the room with him. In the hallway they stood facing each other. Sarah, can I ask you a personal question? She seemed slightly apprehensive but nodded. Of course. Are you happy here? Working with me, taking care of the girls? Do you not feel exploited or that I'm taking advantage of you? Sarah seemed genuinely surprised. Why are you asking that? I just need to know. I need to be sure you're here because you want to be, not because you need the money. William, I love working here. Emily and Sophia are like my own daughters now. You've been generous beyond any reasonable measure. You pay a fair salary, you take care of my Grace, you treat me with respect. Why would you think I wouldn't be happy? Because sometimes I worry that the dynamic between us is unequal, that you feel pressured to accept things you don't want because I'm your employer. Sarah took a step closer. She looked directly into his eyes. I have never felt pressured by you, not once. Everything I've done because I wanted to. And if that ever changes, I promise I'll tell you. Her proximity was intoxicating. William could smell the soft perfume she wore, see the golden flecks in her brown eyes. He had to make a conscious effort not to reach out and touch her face. Are you sure? He insisted, his voice coming out huskier than he intended. Absolutely. They stood there, so close to each other that William could hear her breathing. The moment stretched, charged with something unsaid but deeply felt. Then voices from the living room reminded them that there were guests waiting. Sarah took a step back, breaking the moment. You should get back to your guests. Yes, you can go home now if you want. Thanks again for staying. You're welcome. Good night, William. Good night, Sarah. William went back to the living room but could barely concentrate for the rest of the evening. His mind was completely focused on that moment in the hallway, on the way Sarah had looked at him, on the undeniable chemistry between them. Something had changed that night. A line had been crossed, even if only emotionally. There was no more pretending he felt only gratitude or friendship. After the guests had left and the apartment was quiet, William went to the balcony. The city glittered below, millions of lights twinkling in the darkness. He thought of Catherine, of the life they had together that now seemed to belong to someone else. He thought of how everything had fallen apart, how he had been left alone and lost, and he thought of Sarah, of how she had appeared when he needed her most and transformed everything. He was in love, completely and irrevocably in love. The question now was what to do about it. Risk it and possibly ruin everything they had, or keep his feelings to himself and live with the eternal what if. William didn't know the answer, but one thing was clear: something had to change. He could no longer go on pretending he felt nothing, keeping a safe distance. The heart didn't work that way, And from the way Sarah had looked at him that night, there was a possibility she felt something too. Just a possibility. But sometimes, a possibility was all you needed to find the courage to take a risk. 3 months had passed since that dinner party. The tension between William and Sarah grew day by day, like a stretched cord threatening to snap at any moment. There were glances that lasted a second too long, accidental touches that felt intentional, silences heavy with unsaid things. Mrs. Vance watched it all with the patience of someone watching a soap opera, knowing the main couple would eventually get together. It was just a matter of time. Emily noticed too, with that special intuition children have. One afternoon, while playing house with Sophia, she announced that in the game Daddy and Sarah were married. Sophia immediately agreed, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. William, who overheard the conversation by chance, felt his heart race. Even the children saw what he was trying to hide. Sarah continued her work, with unwavering dedication. The girls grew up healthy and happy under her care. Grace was stronger than ever, the doctors amazed by the progress of her treatment. But there was something different now, in the way Sarah looked at William. A softness in her eyes, when she thought he wasn't looking. A smile that lingered on her lips when they talked. Small signs that fed his hope. On a rainy Sunday in June, William woke up with a plan formed in his head. He didn't know where the courage came from, but he was decided he could no longer live in uncertainty. He needed to know if Sarah felt the same, even if a negative answer meant having to completely rebuild the dynamic between them. He invited Sarah and Grace for lunch at the apartment. It wasn't unusual, they did it sometimes on weekends, but this time William had a plan. After lunch, while the 3 girls were playing in the room, he would ask to speak with Sarah in private. He would tell her the truth, that he was in love, that he couldn't hide it anymore, that he needed to know if there was any chance she felt something similar. Lunch went pleasantly. Mrs. Vance prepared a hearty stew, Grace's favorite dish. The children ate animatedly while the adults talked about trivialities. But William barely touched his food, his stomach in knots from nervousness. After eating, the girls ran to the room to play. Mrs. Vance began to clear the plates. William took a deep breath, gathering his courage. "Sarah, can we talk? In private?" Sarah looked at him with some apprehension. "Of course. Did something happen?" "No, nothing bad. I just need to talk to you." They went to the study. William closed the door behind them, his heart beating so hard he was sure she could hear it. Sarah sat in one of the armchairs, her hands clasped in her lap, clearly nervous. "William, you're scaring me. What happened?" He sat in the armchair next to her, turned to face her directly. "Nothing happened, but I need to tell you something I've been holding in for a long time." He paused, searching for the right words. "Sarah, you changed my life. You changed the girls' lives. You brought light into this house when everything was dark, and in the process, without realizing it, I fell in love with you." Sarah was completely still, her eyes wide, her lips slightly parted. William continued before he lost his nerve. "I know it might seem inappropriate. You work for me, there's a power imbalance. But I can't pretend I don't feel anything anymore. I think about you constantly. When you arrive in the morning, my day gets better. When you leave in the afternoon, the apartment feels empty even with the girls here. You make me want to be a better person, a better father. And if you don't feel the same, I will completely respect that. We can continue as we are, nothing has to change. But I needed you to know the truth." The silence that followed seemed to last an eternity. Sarah just looked at him, processing his words. William felt a cold sweat run down his back. Had he made a terrible mistake? Should he have kept his feelings to himself? Then Sarah moved. She stood up from the armchair and took 2 steps toward him. She reached out and touched William's face with a tenderness that made his heart almost stop. "William, I fell in love with you too." The words took a few seconds to register. When he finally understood, William felt joy explode in his chest like fireworks. "Really?" Sarah smiled, her eyes shining. "Very seriously. I tried not to feel it, I swear I tried. You're my boss, it's complicated. There are 1,000 reasons not to let it happen. But the heart doesn't care about logic. Every morning when I come here, I'm excited to see you. I make up excuses to prolong conversations. I daydream about you. I fell completely in love, even knowing it was probably crazy." William stood up too, taking her hand that was still touching his face. "And now?" "Now I don't know." Sarah gave a nervous laugh. "I've never been in this situation." "What do we do?" "How about we start slow? A dinner, just the two of us. See how we feel outside the context of the apartment and the children." Sarah's eyes lit up. "I would love that." William couldn't hold back any longer. He gently pulled her closer and kissed her. It was a gentle, almost hesitant kiss, testing the boundaries. Sarah responded, putting her arms around his neck. The kiss deepened, months of accumulated tension finally finding release. When they broke apart, they were both breathless. Sarah rested her forehead against his. "Is this real? I'm not dreaming." "It's real, very real." They stayed like that for a few minutes, just holding each other, enjoying the closeness. Then they heard loud laughter coming from the girls' room, and reality returned. They had 3 children to care for, responsibilities, complicated lives. But now they would face them together. In the following days, William and Sarah kept their relationship discreet. They didn't want to confuse the girls or create expectations before they were sure it would work. But it was hard to hide the happiness that emanated from both of them. Mrs. Vance finally commented with a knowing smile, "It was about time you two realized the obvious." They scheduled the dinner for the following Friday. William booked a table at an elegant but discreet restaurant. Sarah was nervous. She had never dined in such a sophisticated place. William assured her she didn't need to worry, that she would look beautiful no matter what. On the night of the dinner, when Sarah arrived, William was speechless. She wore a simple but beautiful dress in a dark blue shade, her hair down in waves over her shoulders, light makeup enhancing her eyes. She was stunning. "You look beautiful," he said sincerely. Sarah blushed. "Thank you. You look very handsome too." They left the 3 girls with Mrs. Vance, who promised to take good care of them. In the car on the way to the restaurant, William held Sarah's hand. She intertwined her fingers with his, a simple but deeply intimate gesture. The dinner was perfect. They talked about everything and nothing. Sarah told stories of her childhood, growing up in a simple but loving family in a small town in Ohio. William talked about building his hotel empire from scratch, the sacrifices he made, the dreams he achieved. They discovered similar musical tastes, similar opinions on books, surprisingly aligned views on life, despite their different backgrounds. When dessert arrived, William took Sarah's hand across the table. "I want you to know that this is serious for me. It's not an adventure or a whim. I'm talking about the future, about building something real." "It's serious for me too," Sarah replied. "But I have to be honest, I'm scared." "Of what?" "That when the novelty wears off, you'll realize we're from worlds that are too different, that I don't fit into your life." William squeezed her hand. "Sarah, you already fit into my life perfectly. The girls love you. I love you. Nothing else matters." It was the first time he had said those words out loud. Sarah's eyes widened. "You love me?" "I do. Completely." Tears streamed down her face. "I love you too. I tried not to, but it's impossible. You're the most incredible man I know." They returned to the apartment hand in hand. In the elevator, William kissed her again, unable to contain himself. When they arrived at the apartment, they found the 3 girls sleeping piled on the sofa, with Mrs. Vance watching television. "How did it go?" the housekeeper asked with a mischievous smile. "Perfect," William replied. "Absolutely perfect." Mrs. Vance looked at the 2 of them, saw the smiles on their faces, their intertwined hands. She shook her head in satisfaction. "About time. Now I'm heading home. Good night to you both." After she left, William and Sarah carried the 3 girls to bed. Emily and Sophia to their beds, Grace to the guest room that William had decorated especially for her. They tucked them in carefully, kissing their sleeping foreheads. In the hallway, standing between the rooms, William pulled Sarah in for another kiss. "Stay a little longer. We can watch something. Talk." She hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "Okay. Just a little longer." They sat on the living room sofa, Sarah nestled in William's arm. They didn't turn on the television, just sat there in comfortable silence, enjoying each other's presence. Sarah told him more about Grace, about the challenges of raising a daughter alone, about the constant fear that something would happen to her health. William shared his own insecurities as a father, the fear of failing his girls, the loneliness of the past few years. "What was it like when Catherine left?" Sarah asked softly. "You never talk much about her." William took a deep breath. It was devastating. Not for the loss of the marriage itself, that was already over before she left, but for the way it happened. By email, cold and distant, as if she were cancelling a magazine subscription, and for abandoning the girls. Emily was so little, she asked for her mother every day, and Sophia never even had a chance to know her. That must have been so hard. It was. I felt like a failure as a husband, as a father. I questioned everything, but eventually I accepted that some things are out of our control. Catherine's depression was real and severe. She couldn't be a mother, not at that moment. Maybe she never will be. And that's okay. The girls have me. They had Eleanor, and now they have you. Sarah kissed his cheek. They're lucky to have you as a father. You're dedicated, loving, present. Many children don't have that. They talked late into the night. When Sarah finally went home, it was past midnight. William stayed up a little longer, processing the happiness he felt. He was loving again. After years of being closed off, protecting his heart, he had allowed himself to feel, and it was terrifying and wonderful at the same time. In the following months, their relationship blossomed. They maintained a certain discretion out of respect for the children, but it was obvious to anyone who looked that they were in love. The three girls loved it when they all spent time together. Emily started asking when Sarah was going to move in with them. Sophia wanted to know if Grace would be her real sister. William began to think seriously about the future, a bigger house where they could all live together comfortably, maybe even more children if Sarah wanted. Dreams that had seemed impossible months ago now seemed not only possible but probable. One morning he was in his study when he received a call from an unknown number. He answered distractedly, still thinking about a meeting he'd had minutes before. "Hello?" "William, it's Catherine." The world stopped. The voice he hadn't heard in 18 months, as cold and distant as he remembered. William was paralyzed, unable to process that his ex-wife was on the line. "Catherine," he finally managed to say, "what do you want?" "I need to talk to you, in person. I'm in New York. Can I come over this afternoon?" William felt a sudden wave of nausea. "No, you can't. After 18 months with no contact, without even asking how the girls are, you think you can just show up? I know I have a lot to explain, but please give me a chance to do it. Just one conversation." "Why? Why now?" There was a pause. Then Catherine said, "Because I saw pictures of the girls on social media. I saw how big and beautiful and happy they are. And I regret it, William. I deeply regret leaving. I want to try again, to be a mother to them." The words hit William like a bucket of cold water. Catherine wanting to come back, wanting to be a mother, after all this time? Impossible. He wouldn't allow it, not after everything that had happened, all the suffering she had caused the girls. "I think it's better if you don't come. The girls barely remember you. Emily stopped asking about you over a year ago. Sophia doesn't even know who you are. You lost the right to be their mother when you abandoned them by your own choice. I was sick, William. You know that. And now you're miraculously cured? Ready to be a mother after deciding by email that you didn't want to be. I underwent intensive therapy. I worked on myself. I'm better, much better, and I want a chance to be part of my daughter's lives." William felt anger boil in his chest. Too late. They already have a mother now, someone who really cares, who is present, who loves them unconditionally. Are you married again? That's none of your business. I have rights, William, parental rights. I can seek legal counsel if necessary. The veiled threat made William's blood run cold. "Is that it? You came to threaten me? After abandoning your daughters, now you want to fight for them legally?" "I don't want a war, but they are my daughters too. I deserve a chance to know them." William slammed the phone down, shaking with anger and fear. Catherine was back, wanting the girls, threatening legal action. It was a nightmare come true. He sat in his office chair for long minutes, trying to process what had just happened. His hands were shaking, his heart was beating so hard he could hear the blood pulsing in his ears. 18 months. 18 months of absolute silence, and now Catherine just decides she wants to be a mother again. William stood up and started pacing his office. He needed to think. He needed a plan. Catherine had legal rights. He knew that. Even though she had abandoned the girls, there had never been a process to terminate her parental rights. She was technically still the legal mother of Emily and Sophia. But legal rights meant nothing compared to what really mattered. Emily and Sophia didn't know Catherine. To them she was a stranger, a distant shadow of a past they barely remembered. Sarah was the one they called when they scraped their knee, who sang them lullabies, who dried their tears and celebrated their small victories. Sarah was their mother in every sense that truly mattered. William picked up his phone and called Sarah. She answered on the second ring, her voice worried. "William, did something happen?" Catherine called. He told her everything, the words tumbling out. She saw pictures of the girls on social media, and now she wants to come back. She wants to be their mother. She threatened me with lawyers. On the other end of the line, Sarah was silent for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was calm, despite the situation. "Breathe, William. We'll deal with this together. You're not alone." "I'm scared, Sarah. Scared of losing them. Scared that a judge will decide Catherine deserves a second chance and take my daughters away from me." "That won't happen. Emily and Sophia are happy, healthy, settled. Any judge will see that. They'll see that tearing them away from this stability would be harmful. And what if they don't? What if they decide a biological mother has more rights?" "Then we fight," Sarah said with the firmness William loved in her. "We fight with everything we have. But we're not going to despair before we know what she really wants. Maybe it's just a passing impulse. Maybe when she sees the reality of the situation, she'll give up." William wanted to believe that, but he knew Catherine well enough to know that when she decided something, she rarely changed her mind easily. If she was threatening legal action, it was because she was determined. "I need you here," he said. "I can't handle this alone. I'm leaving work now. I'll be there in half an hour." While he waited for Sarah to arrive, William went to the girls' room. Emily was drawing at the low table, her tongue sticking out in concentration. Sophia was playing with dolls on the floor, creating some elaborate story about princesses and dragons. When they saw him, they both ran to hug him. "Daddy, look at my drawing," Emily said proudly, showing him a paper full of colors. "It's our family. You, me, Soph, Mommy Sarah and Grace." William looked at the drawing. 5 stick figures holding hands, smiles drawn on their round faces. Above them, a bright yellow sun and fluffy clouds. It was a simple child's drawing, but it represented everything that mattered. This was their family. There was no room for Catherine there because she had never been present to occupy that space. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," William said, kissing Emily's forehead. "Very well done. Can I hang it on the fridge?" "Of course you can." He carried both girls to the kitchen and stuck the drawing on the refrigerator with a colorful magnet. As he did so, he thought about how he would protect this family he had fought so hard to build. He would not allow Catherine, with her late regrets and selfish impulses, to destroy what they had. When Sarah arrived, she found William in the kitchen with the girls. She hugged him tightly, and in that moment, William felt he could face anything as long as she was by his side. Together, they would find a way. Together, they would protect their daughters. Together, they would keep their family united no matter what happened. William spent the rest of the day in a state of shock. Catherine's call had unearthed feelings he thought he had buried forever. Anger at the way she had abandoned the family. fear of what she might do now, concern about how this would affect Emily and Sophia, and a deep terror of losing his daughters. When Sarah arrived for her workday, she immediately noticed something was wrong. "William, what happened? You're pale." He told her about the call. He saw Sarah's expression change from concern to alarm. "Catherine wants to come back. She wants to be the girls' mother again, and she threatened legal action if I don't let her." Sarah sat down heavily on the sofa. "Can she do that? Legally?" "I don't know. I need to talk to lawyers. But she has parental rights in theory. She never officially lost custody. She just left." William ran his hands through his hair. "I won't let her come back and mess up the girls' lives. They're happy, stable. I won't allow them to be traumatized again. And what if she's really changed? If she's recovered from her depression and genuinely wants to be a mother? 18 months, Sarah. 18 months without a single call, email, or message. Not on Emily's birthday, not on Christmas, nothing. And now she shows up wanting to be a mother. I don't believe in this sudden change of heart." Sarah held his hand. "Let's find out what she really wants. Maybe it's just a passing impulse. Maybe when she sees the reality of being a mother again, she'll give up. Or maybe she'll try to take my daughters from me." That afternoon, Catherine showed up unannounced. The doorbell rang, and when William opened the door, there she was, still as beautiful as he, remembered, perhaps thinner, her blonde hair cut shorter. She wore elegant clothes, flawless makeup. She looked completely different from the woman devastated by depression who had left years ago. "William," she said, trying to smile, "thank you for having me. I didn't invite you, you just showed up. Please, just a few minutes, we need to talk." William hesitated, then made room for her to enter. He didn't want a scene in the hallway where neighbors could see. Catherine entered and looked around the apartment as if recognizing a familiar but distant place. "Not much has changed here." "Everything has changed," William corrected. "You just weren't here to see it." They went to the living room. William didn't offer her anything, not even a seat. He stood, arms crossed, in a defensive posture. Catherine sat on the edge of the sofa, clearly uncomfortable. "I know you must be furious with me. You have every right to be. What I did was terrible. It was abandonment. You abandoned your daughters." "I was sick, William. The postpartum depression was much worse than anyone imagined. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't look at the babies without feeling a terrible emptiness. I thought they would be better off without me. So you ran away without looking back. I went to the clinic in Switzerland as we agreed. I did intensive therapy, took medication, worked on myself." Catherine looked at her own hands. "But when it was time to come back, I panicked. I was afraid I wouldn't be a good enough mother, that I would cause more harm than good. So I made the cowardly decision not to return. And now, why the change of heart? Because I'm better, really better. And because I saw pictures of the girls on your assistants. Social media. I saw how they've grown, how beautiful they are, and I realized everything I've lost. I realized I made a horrible mistake." William felt anger explode. "You saw pictures on social media and that made you want to be a mother. It wasn't because you missed them, not because of unconditional love. It was pictures on Instagram." "I know it sounds bad," Catherine stood up, "but it was the trigger I needed. It made me realize I was wasting precious time. My daughters are growing up without me. Because you chose that. No one forced you to leave. I know, and I regret it every day. But William, please give me a chance to fix this. Let me get to know the girls again. Let me be their mother." Too late. They already have a maternal figure, someone who really cares and is present. "You're talking about the nanny?" The condescending tone with which she said nanny made William see red. "She has a name, Sarah, and she's much more than a nanny. She's the girl's caregiver, part of the family, and the woman I love." Catherine's eyes widened. "You're dating the help?" "Watch your tone. Sarah is an extraordinary woman who saved our daughters when you weren't here. Don't you dare diminish her." "William, be reasonable. She may be a great person, but she's not their mother. I am." "You lost that right when you left." "Legally, I didn't." Catherine straightened her back. "I consulted lawyers before I came here. I have parental rights. I can request a visitation schedule. I can fight for shared custody if necessary. You wouldn't dare. I don't want to get to that point. I prefer we make an amicable agreement, but if you stop me from seeing my daughters, I will seek justice. At that moment, Emily and Sophia ran into the living room, followed by Sarah. The girls stopped abruptly when they saw the strange woman. Emily frowned, as if trying to remember something. Sophia hid behind Sarah. Catherine looked at her daughters with an expression of overwhelming emotion. Her eyes filled with tears. Emily? Sophia? You've grown so much. Emily looked at her father, confused. Daddy, who is she? The question visibly hit Catherine. She brought a hand to her chest. Emily, it's me, your mother. Emily just looked at her without comprehension. Sophia clung tighter to Sarah. The innocent rejection from the children was more effective than any argument William could have made. I think you should leave, William said firmly. You're scaring the girls. Catherine wiped her tears angrily. This is your fault. You turned them against me. I didn't do anything. You did this to yourself when you disappeared from their lives. My lawyer will be in touch. Catherine grabbed her purse and walked to the door. I'm not giving up on them, William. They are my daughters. After she left, William knelt in front of Emily and Sophia. They both looked frightened. Who was that? Woman, Daddy? Emily asked. William looked at Sarah, seeking silent support. She's someone who knew you when you were very little, but don't worry. She's gone now, and everything is fine. I didn't like her, Sophia murmured. She's mean. She's not mean, my love. She's just confused. Later, after the girls were in bed, William and Sarah had a serious talk in the living room. She's going to sue for custody, William said, his voice heavy with worry. I looked it up online. She has rights even though she abandoned them. She can argue she was sick, that she's recovered now. And does she have a chance of winning? I don't know. Maybe she can get supervised visitation. But the idea of handing my daughters over to her, even for a few hours, terrifies me. Sarah bit her lip, thoughtful. William, I need to tell you something, and you're not going to like it. What? I think I should step away. William felt the floor drop out from under him. What do you mean, step away? Catherine will use our relationship against you. She'll argue that you put the maid in their mother's place, that there's an inappropriate environment at home. My presence could harm your custody case. No. William took her hands. I won't let you go. The girls need you. I need you. And what if my presence makes you lose custody? What if my presence is the argument Catherine needs to take your daughters away? That won't happen. You don't know that. Sarah had tears in her eyes. William, I love you. I love these girls as if they were my own, but I can't be the reason you lose them. I couldn't live with that. So what are you suggesting? That I step away until the situation is resolved. I'll quit my job, stop coming here. When everything is settled, we can try again. William shook his head vehemently. No, the girls will regress if you leave. Remember what they were like before you came. They didn't eat. They didn't talk. They were traumatized. If you leave now, it could cause new trauma. Then what do? We fight. Together. I'll get the best lawyer there is. We'll prove that you are an essential part of the girls' lives, that they are happy and healthy. Catherine abandoned these children, no matter how good a lawyer. She gets... The truth is, she chose not to be a mother, and she can't just change her mind when it's convenient. In the following days, William hired a lawyer specializing in family law, a man in his 50s with gray hair and a shrewd look. He listened to the whole story attentively, taking notes. The case is complicated, he admitted. Catherine has parental rights, but the prolonged abandonment counts against her. And if we can prove that the girls have an established and healthy bond with you, especially with Sarah, we have a chance. Will she use our relationship? Against me? She'll try, but we can argue that Sarah was hired professionally first, that the relationship developed naturally later. Also, if we can get witnesses to attest to the positive bond between her and the girls, that helps. William felt a small but present hope. We'll do whatever it takes. A week later, they received a formal notification. Catherine was filing for visitation and possible shared custody. She argued that she had recovered from postpartum depression, that she was now stable and employed, and that she deserved a chance to be a mother to her daughters. She also mentioned, as William had feared, that there was an inappropriate relationship between the father and the domestic employee, creating an unsuitable environment for the children. When Sarah read the notice, she cried, "I was right. I'm hurting you." "You're not." William hugged her. "We'll prove she's wrong. We'll show the judge that our girls are happy and healthy, that you were essential to their recovery, that we are a real family." But the fear was present in both of them. What if they lost? What if Catherine got custody? What if Emily and Sophia were forced to live with a mother? They didn't know who had abandoned them. Sarah made a painful decision that night. "William, I'm going to step away temporarily, just until the case is over. I won't officially resign, but I'll stop coming here every day. I'll visit the girls on weekends discreetly, but during the week it will just be you and Eleanor with them." "Sarah, no. It's necessary. If I keep coming every day, Catherine will have ammunition, but if I step away, we take that argument away from her. And when it's all over, when you have sole custody, I'll come back. And what if the girls don't understand? What if they think you've abandoned them too? We'll explain. We'll say I needed to take care of Grace, that I'll be back soon. Children are resilient. They'll understand." William knew she was right, but it hurt too much to accept. "When will I see you?" "On weekends, and we'll talk on the phone every day, I promise. But during the week it needs to look like I'm just an occasional employee, not a central part of the family. I love you. You know that, right?" "I know. I love you too. That's why I'm doing this, to protect you and the girls." The next day, Sarah talked to Emily and Sophia. She explained that she would need to spend more time with Grace in the coming weeks, that her daughter wasn't feeling well and needed her mom around. The girls were sad, but seemed to understand. Sarah promised to visit them every Saturday, and they took comfort in that. But when Sarah actually stopped coming, the impact was immediate. Emily became quieter, less cheerful. Sophia went back to sucking her thumb constantly. They didn't stop eating like before, but the joy that had permeated. The apartment was gone. It was as if a light had gone out again. William saw this and felt overwhelming guilt. It was all Catherine's fault. She had destroyed the family years ago, and now she was destroying it again. But he wouldn't give up. He would fight with everything he had to keep his daughters and to bring Sarah back permanently. The following months were the hardest William had ever faced. The legal process moved slowly, like all legal processes. Catherine had obtained a temporary supervised visitation schedule while the final custody was being decided. Once a week, Emily and Sophia were taken to a specialized center where they spent 2 hours with their biological mother under the supervision of a social worker. The visits were torturous. Emily would cry before going, begging not to have to see that strange woman. Sophia would be completely silent for the 2 hours, refusing to interact. The social worker's reports were disheartening. The children showed clear discomfort with Catherine. There was no established bond. They seemed forced to be there against their will. But Catherine's lawyer argued that it was natural, that they needed time to rebuild the relationship, that the initial rejection was expected. The judge, a serious middle-aged man, listened to both sides with a neutral expression, taking notes, not showing which way he was leaning. William talked to Sarah every day on the phone. The conversations were his only anchor of sanity amidst the chaos. She advised him, encouraged him, reminded him they were doing the right thing. But the distance was painful for both of them. On Saturdays, when Sarah came to visit discreetly, the 3 girls would cling to her as if they feared she would disappear again. The process revealed facts William didn't know about Catherine's time abroad. Investigators hired by his lawyer discovered that she hadn't just been getting treatment. She had started a relationship with a therapist from the clinic, a Frenchman 10 years older. They had lived together for over a year. The relationship ended a few months before she decided to return to the US. An interesting coincidence. When this information was presented to the judge, Catherine was visibly shaken. Her lawyer argued that adult relationships had no relevance to maternal capacity. But William saw the mask fall for a moment. Catherine hadn't come back for maternal love. She had come back because she was alone again, because her relationship had ended, because she saw pictures of happy daughters and felt something that was perhaps jealousy or late remorse. A court-appointed psychologist was assigned to evaluate everyone involved. She interviewed William at length, asking about his routine with the girls, about the care he provided, about the incident with the previous nanny and the subsequent recovery. He answered everything honestly, explaining how Sarah had saved the girls when doctors couldn't. The psychologist also interviewed Sarah. She wanted to know about the methods she used, about her bond with the children, about her relationship with William. Sarah was transparent. She explained that she was initially hired professionally, that the romantic relationship developed naturally later, that she loved the girls as if they were her own daughters. And the most important interviews were with Emily and Sophia. The psychologist spent several sessions with them, using games and drawings to understand their feelings. Emily drew the family as she saw it: Daddy, herself, Sophia, Sarah, and Grace. She didn't include Catherine. When asked about the woman from the visits, she said she was strange and that she preferred to be with Sarah. Sophia, younger and less articulate, showed physical discomfort when shown a photo of Catherine. She shrank back, turned her face away. But when shown a photo of Sarah, she smiled immediately, pointing and saying, "My Sarah." The psychological reports were devastating for Catherine's case. The psychologist concluded that the girls had an established maternal bond with Sarah, that they did not recognize Catherine as a maternal figure, and that the forced visits were causing stress and anxiety in the children. Catherine did not take it well. In one of the hearings, she stood up and shouted that it was unfair, that William had turned the daughters against her, that she deserved a chance to make up for lost time. The judge called for order, warning that inappropriate behavior would not help her case. But she didn't give up. She brought witnesses, people from the clinic in Switzerland, who testified to her recovery. Doctors who confirmed that her postpartum depression was controlled with medication. She argued that she deserved a second chance, that she was willing to do family therapy, that she genuinely wanted to be a mother. William watched it all with growing apprehension. What if the judge decided to give her that second chance? What if he ordered shared custody? The idea of his daughters spending half their time with Catherine away from him and Sarah was unbearable. The turning point came in a tense hearing. William's lawyer presented crucial evidence, detailed hospital medical records of the traumatic episode that caused the girls' food refusal. Records showing how they arrived at the hospital dangerously malnourished, reports from 5 different specialists who couldn't help, and the emotional testimony of Mrs. Vance describing the day Sarah managed to get the girls to eat for the first time in over a month. The lawyer argued forcefully. Catherine had abandoned her daughters when they were 2 and a baby. She had maintained no contact for 18 months. She returned only when she saw pictures on social media, not out of unconditional love, but out of a selfish impulse. And most importantly, during this entire period of absence, William had cared for the girls alone, including during a severe traumatic crisis. With Sarah's help, the children recovered and were happy and healthy. Forcing them to interact with a biological mother they didn't recognize would be traumatizing again. It would be putting the interests of a regretful adult above the well-being of the children. And that, the lawyer argued with a firm voice, was the exact opposite of what justice should do. Children were not property to be reclaimed when convenient. They were human beings with feelings and needs that had to be prioritized. Catherine cried throughout the speech. Her lawyer tried to counter-argue, but it was hard to refute the facts. The evidence was clear. The girls were settled, happy, and healthy with William and Sarah. They had no bond with Catherine. Forcing a change in that dynamic would be harmful, but the process didn't end. It dragged on for more months. 10 months in total since Catherine had shown up at the apartment door. 10 months of anguish, of forced visits, of uncertainty about the future. During that time, something began to change in Catherine. William noticed it during the supervised visits. She seemed less insistent, less confident. The girls continued to reject her, no matter what she tried. She brought gifts they barely looked at. She tried to talk and received monosyllabic answers. The reality of being a mother to children who didn't recognize her was proving much harder than she had imagined. On the 18th visit, Catherine arrived late. She looked tired, her eyes red as if she had been crying. Emily and Sophia barely reacted when she entered. They were used to the routine now, simply sitting in silence for 2 hours until they could leave. Catherine tried to play with them, offering new dolls she had brought. Emily took one politely but showed no enthusiasm. Sophia didn't even look. After an hour of unsuccessfully trying to create some connection, Catherine simply gave up. She sat in her chair and stared at the daughters who were strangers to her. The social worker noticed and made a note in her report. That was the last visit Catherine attended. She missed the next 3 scheduled visits. She sent a message saying she was sick, that she needed to reschedule, that she was having personal problems, but she never rescheduled. William received a call from his lawyer one afternoon. Catherine has given up. She's withdrawn her request for shared custody and visitation. What do you mean, given up? She told her lawyer she can't do it, that she realized the girls don't see her as a mother, that forcing contact is doing more harm than good. She's going back to Europe to start her life over there. William felt a complex mix of emotions: overwhelming relief that the threat was over, sadness for the daughters who would never have a present biological mother, and anger that Catherine had tried and then simply given up again, proving she never had any real commitment. And the case? Closed. The judge will approve her withdrawal and grant you sole custody. Congratulations, William. Your daughters are staying with you. When he hung up the phone, William collapsed into his office chair and cried, tears of relief, of exhaustion, of gratitude. It was over. Emily and Sophia would stay with him. And Sarah could come back. He called her immediately. Sarah, it's over. Catherine gave up. We can really be together now. On the other end of the line, Sarah was sobbing. Really? Is it really over? It's over. Come home. The girls need you. I need you. I'm on my way. When Sarah arrived at the apartment an hour later, she was greeted by Emily and Sophia, who ran to hug her, crying, "We missed you so much. Why did you take so long to come back?" Sarah hugged them both tightly, kissing their heads repeatedly. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Grace's mommy needed me. But now I'm back and I'm never leaving again." "Promise?" "I promise." William watched from the hallway, his heart overflowing. There was his family, not traditional, not conventional, but real, made not of blood or obligation, but of genuine love and conscious choice. That night, after the girls were asleep, William and Sarah sat on the sofa. He held her hand, just enjoying the closeness that had been missing for so long. 10 months, Sarah. 10 terrible months. But it's over. And we came, out stronger. You were right to step away. It took away her main argument. The judge saw that it wasn't about you. It was about what was best for the girls. And what's best for them is for us all to be together. William turned to face her. He took both her hands in his. "Sarah, these 10 months made me realize something. I don't want to live without you anymore. I don't want a casual relationship or a romance that could end. I want a real commitment. I want a real family." Sarah smiled through her tears. "I want that too." "Then marry me. Be my wife. Be the girl's mother officially. Let's raise these 3 children together and be happy." Sarah laughed and cried at the same time. "Yes, yes, I want to marry you." William kissed her, pouring 10 months of longing into that kiss. When they broke apart, they were both laughing and crying. "We'll tell the girls tomorrow," William said. "They'll be so happy." "Grace will be my real sister," Sarah said, thinking of her daughter. "The 3 of them will be official sisters. A real family, not perfect, but ours." That night, William slept, better than he had in months. The nightmare was over. Catherine was out of their lives for good. Sarah was back. And the future, for the first time in a long time, seemed bright and full of possibilities. 18 months had passed since the day Sarah first arrived at William's apartment. 18 months that felt like a lifetime. So many things had changed, so many obstacles had been overcome, so many tears shed, and so many joys shared. The wedding took place on a sunny afternoon in November. William wanted something big and elaborate, but Sarah insisted on a simple ceremony. Just close family and dear friends. They held it in a small but beautiful chapel in the Berkshires, surrounded by flowering gardens and mountains in the background. Emily and Sophia were flower girls, wearing white dresses with pink sashes, flowers in their hair, huge smiles on their faces. Grace was the other flower girl, equally beautiful in a dress identical to her sister's. The three walked down the aisle tossing rose petals, proud of their important role. Sarah entered wearing a simple but elegant dress, her hair down in soft waves, a bouquet of daisies in her hands. She wore no elaborate veil, just white flowers tucked into her hair. She was radiant, her eyes shining with happiness. When William saw her walking towards him, he felt his eyes fill with tears. Here came the woman who had changed everything, who had saved his daughters and won his heart. The ceremony was short but emotional. When it was time for the vows, William held Sarah's hands and spoke from the heart. "Sarah, you came into my life when everything was dark, when I saw no way out, when I thought I had lost my daughters forever. And you, with your infinite patience, your unconditional love, and your extraordinary strength brought the light back. You saved Emily and Sophia. You saved me too. I promise to love you every day of my life. I promise to honor your strength and dignity. I promise to be a father to Grace as I am to my own daughters. I promise to build a real family with you, based on love, respect, and joy." Sarah was crying when it was her turn. "William, I never imagined I could be this happy. I've worked my whole life just to survive, to take care of my daughter, to get through another day. But you showed me that life can be more than survival. It can be joy, love, a true partnership. I promise to take care of you and the girls with all my heart. I promise to be there in good times and bad. I promise that together we will build a home full of love, laughter, and waffles every Thursday without fail." The last sentence drew laughter from everyone present. It was a reference to the day that had changed everything, that magical Thursday when Emily and Sophia ate for the first time in over a month. When the minister declared them husband and wife, William kissed Sarah under the applause and cheers of the guests. Emily, Sophia, and Grace ran to hug them, creating a perfect circle of love and family. The reception was in the garden of the inn where they were staying. Nothing too elaborate, just good food, soft music, and loved ones. Mrs. Vance was there, of course, crying with happiness. Sarah's mother, too, a simple but loving woman who hugged William and said, "Take good care of my girl." He promised he would. During the party, William watched, the three girls playing together. Emily was now 5.5, tall and smart. Sophia, 3, was a tireless chatterbox. Grace, almost 10, looked after the two with the patience of an older sister. They were real sisters now, in every sense that mattered. Sarah came up beside him, following his gaze. "What are you thinking about?" "About how much has changed. 2 years ago I was desperate, alone, watching my daughters waste away. I thought I would never be happy again. And now look, we have a beautiful family, 3 healthy girls, a whole future ahead of us. Life is surprising sometimes. You surprised me. You surprise me every day." Sarah rested her head on his shoulder. "You know what I realized? I never thanked you for taking care of Grace, for paying for her treatment, for giving her a chance at a normal life. You don't have to thank me. Grace is my daughter now too." And it was true. The heart treatment had been so successful that Grace was practically cured. The doctors said that with proper follow-up, she could have a completely normal life. Seeing the girl running, playing, full of energy and joy was one of William's greatest accomplishments. Months after the wedding, life continued to be happy and stable. William continued to run his business, expanding his hotel chain. But now, he balanced work with family life in a way he never could before. He came home for dinner with the family every night. He took the girls to the park on weekends. He was truly present, not just physically but emotionally. Sarah had enrolled in a child psychology course at a public university. She studied at night, determined to turn her practical experience into formal knowledge. She wanted to help other traumatized children professionally. William supported her completely, taking care of the 3 girls on the nights she had class. One Thursday afternoon, the whole family was in the kitchen making waffles. It was a sacred tradition now. Every Thursday, without fail, they made Sarah's grandmother's recipe. The three girls helped, always making a mess, always laughing. William took pictures with his phone, wanting to capture these moments of simple but profound happiness. Emily, now 6, was telling her sisters about a school project. "We're going to do a play about family. Can I bring you guys to present?" "Of course, sweetheart," Sarah replied, kissing her forehead. "We'll all come and watch. And can I say I have 2 mummies, Mommy Sarah and Mommy Catherine?" The silence that followed was heavy. Catherine was a subject they rarely mentioned. William and Sarah looked at each other, not knowing how to respond. Then Emily shook her head. "No, forget it. I only have one mommy. Sarah. The other woman left and never came back. She's not a real mommy." "Emily," William began, not wanting his daughter to hold a grudge. "Catherine was sick. She couldn't be a mother, but it wasn't because she didn't love you." "I know, Daddy. The teacher explained about illnesses that make people sad, but still she left. And Mommy Sarah stayed. Mommy Sarah always stays." Sarah knelt in front of Emily, tears streaming down her face. "I will always stay, my love. I promise. I'm your mother, and I will always be here." Sophia and Grace joined the hug. William, too. They stood there, the 5 of them hugging in the kitchen that smelled of waffles and cinnamon, forming a perfect circle of love and belonging. More months passed. Grace turned 10 and they had a huge party, with all her friends from school. Emily lost her first tooth and eagerly awaited the tooth fairy. Sophia learned to write her own name and proudly showed everyone. Sarah was in her 3rd semester of psychology and loving it. She was already talking about opening a specialized practice for childhood trauma when she graduated. William encouraged her, saying she would be an extraordinary psychologist because she understood children in a way that books couldn't teach. One night, after the girls were asleep, William and Sarah were on the balcony of their apartment. They had moved to a larger place, a spacious house with a garden where the girls could play. But sometimes they went back to the old apartment to visit Mrs. Vance, who still worked with them a few times a week. "Sarah, can I ask you a question?" "Always." "Are you happy? Truly? Do you have any regrets?" Sarah turned to look at him directly. "William, I am happier than I ever imagined possible. I have a wonderful husband, 3 beautiful daughters. I'm studying something I love. How could I have any regrets? Sometimes I worry that your life has changed too much. You worked so hard, you were so independent, and now you're here married to me, taking care of the girls. My life has changed, but for the better. I'm still independent, William. I study, I have my own goals, but now I also have a family. I have love. I have the security of knowing I'm not alone. And that doesn't make me dependent, it makes me complete." William kissed her, pouring all the love he felt into that kiss. When they broke apart, he said, "Thank you for everything, for saving my daughters, for loving me, for building this family with me. You saved me too. You gave me a life I didn't even know I could have." They stood there holding each other, looking at the city lights, planning the future. Sarah wanted to get a master's degree after graduation. William was thinking of expanding the business internationally. Emily talked about being a veterinarian. Sophia wanted to be a ballerina. Grace dreamed of being a doctor to help other children like her. They were beautiful, possible, achievable dreams, and they would achieve them together, as a family. Years later, when Emily was 10, Sophia 8, and Grace 14, the family was gathered in the living room. Sarah had graduated with a degree in psychology and opened a small but thriving practice. She specialized in childhood trauma and helped children who had gone through what Emily and Sophia had. She saw her own suffering and recovery reflected in each case, and that made her even more dedicated. William was still successful in business, but now he delegated more, spent more time at home. The 3 girls were growing up healthy, happy, with no visible scars from the traumas of the past. Grace was cured of her heart condition, living a completely normal life. Emily and Sophia barely remembered the period when they didn't eat. It was a distant, hazy memory. One Thursday, as always, they were all making waffles. It was a tradition they had never broken in all those years. Emily now made the batter by herself, proud to have mastered the recipe. Sophia helped Grace decorate the finished waffles with fruit and syrup. Sarah and William just watched, hands intertwined, hearts full. "Daddy," Emily said suddenly, "remember when you told me that Soph and I didn't eat when we were little, and that Mommy Sarah taught us how to eat again?" "I remember, my love." "How did she do it?" William looked at Sarah, who smiled and nodded for him to continue. "She made waffles. On a Thursday, just like we're doing now. And you ate because you saw Grace eating happily, and you realized that food wasn't dangerous." "Was that all?" Emily seemed surprised. "Waffles cured us. It wasn't just the waffles. It was the love, the patience, your mother's calm presence when everyone else was desperate. It was her believing that you would recover when no one else did." Emily walked over to Sarah and hugged her. "Thank you, Mummy, for taking care of us." Sarah hugged her daughter tightly, her eyes full of happy tears. "Always, my love. I will always take care of you." That night, after the girls were asleep, William held Sarah in his arms. "We've built something beautiful, haven't we? We have, and we'll keep building. Forever. Forever." And there, in that house full of love and laughter, with 3 girls sleeping peacefully in their rooms, William realized he had found what he had always been looking for. It wasn't a business empire or financial success. It was this, a real family, unconditional love, a home that wasn't defined by walls or an address, but by the people who lived in it. Sarah had entered his life as a last desperate hope, and she had transformed everything. She had saved his daughters. She had saved him. And in the process, they had built something together that they never imagined possible. A family made not of blood or obligation, but of love, patience, and a genuine connection that transcended all differences and expectations. It was an imperfect family, as all families are. They had difficult days, arguments, challenges, but they faced everything together with a love and commitment that made any obstacle surmountable. And every Thursday, without fail, they made waffles, because waffles weren't just food, they were a symbol of healing, of love, of hope. They were a reminder that with patience, faith, and a lot of care, even the deepest traumas could be overcome. And they lived happily, not in the fairy tale sense where nothing goes wrong, but in the real sense of building happiness day by day, choosing love even in difficult moments, staying together through all the storms. It was an imperfect, complicated, real happiness. And for that very reason, it was all the more precious. End of story.